Let's call to order the City Commission meeting of the City of St. Pete Beach. Today is Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. It is 6 p.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Lorenzen.
Here.
Commissioner Marriott.
Here.
Commissioner Phillips.
Here.
Commissioner Rosnicki.
Here.
Mayor Petrella.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda as proposed, please?
I do want to request a change if possible.
Sure.
I want to respectfully ask the commission to move 4A, B, C, and D from tonight's agenda because I had been gone since Thursday to the Florida League and didn't know about the items that came about B, C, D till much later and wasn't able to access email. I know I received a lot of calls, texts from the public, from the residents, and haven't been able to speak to them in regards to those items. And this is the district that I represent. So I would like to be able, to be able to discuss and motion for those items appropriately.
Commissioners, any discussion?
Well, I disagree. Item A for sure. I mean, we've been talking about that one for months, so I don't agree with A. B, C, D, I don't really have a strong opinion either way on those, although they look like fairly light load items to me.
Yeah. I mean, we had a special town hall just for the boat ramp. You know, we asked Mike at that meeting whether there was any additional information forthcoming. There really isn't. So I don't know that it benefits anyone to delay something that could actually address a serious problem in that neighborhood.
I guess my question would be around the time sensitivity for some of these items. I know with the boat ramp, my understanding is we can't apply for the grant without getting too far into it right now. We can't apply for the grant until next spring. Anyways, if we are going to get a new ramp, right? If that's the route. So I don't know how time sensitive that one is, but I kind of want to get into the conversation, with other commissioners to hear their opinions. But I'm open to either way on them.
I mean, I certainly understand the concern that without having been able, for any of us, been able to access our emails for a couple of days, that that there might be concerns or opinions that we haven't seen. But we've also had a lot of time for people to comment, particularly on item A, the boat ramp. And I can see both sides. I hate to see the wheels of government turn even slower. But
I think those are fair points for items B, C, and D.
yeah.
But again, with the boat ramp, we've been at it for over a year.
Yeah.
A special town hall just for it. So what is the consensus?
And would it be fair to say, not take a vote, but have the discussion? Because I agree, but apparently there's been a lot of public comments that haven't been received. And that's why I use A, B, C, and D, because all of them could have public comments, and I don't know.
Well, in that case, we should just
Which
scrap the entire meeting tonight.
Sorry.
I said in that case, we should just scrap the entire meeting tonight.
What's specific to a district that I represent. That's
No, I'm
that's
just
why
saying
asking
if the
that.
argument is we haven't had access to email since yesterday morning, we should just scrap the entire meeting because it doesn't affect just those 3 or 4 items, it affects everything.
Yep. I say we continue on as published. I just don't think that's, I say let's keep the ball rolling. We've spent a lot of time on this already.
All right, if one of you would please make a motion, and then we can vote it up or down, just so that we have it on the record, that'd be great.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
I second.
I would like to make an amendment to that motion. I would like to add a discussion for the freebie and add actually, yeah, that's it. Sorry, just the freebie.
Oh, the freebie.
Yeah.
I would also like to add 2 discussion items.
First, we need to take a vote on Mayor Petrola's amendment, and then you can amend.
I will
Okay.
just remind everyone, no cell phones, no speaking, no clapping, no laughing, no, just please, if we can maintain the quorum, whoever's called up front or to the microphone to speak with, I certainly appreciate that, just so everyone can be heard. Thank you, City Clerk.
So this vote is just to accept the mayor's amendment to the motion that was made on the floor. That first motion by Commissioner Marriott and Vice Mayor Lorenzen is still pending. So this is just for the mayor's amendment, please. Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Philps?
For the amendment,
Correct, just for the amendment.
yes.
Commissioner Reznicki?
No.
Commissioner Vice Mayor Lorenzen? Mayor Petrola?
Yes.
Okay, motion for the amendment carries 4-1. Vice Mayor Lorenzen?
Yes, I'd like to, if the commission will agree, I'd like to add just 2 quick hitter items for me. The first one's going to be 8th Avenue parking, which the mayor's already brought up, but I just wanted to add a little more to that. And the second one would be the children's playground proposal for Hurley Park.
So those would be discussion items D and E?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so this is for just the amendment that was proposed by Vice Mayor Lorenzen. Commissioner Philps,
And this is to move forward.
to add Commissioner Lorenzen's 2 requests to the main motion
Understood,
on the floor.
yes.
Commissioner Reznicki,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lorenzen,
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott,
Yes.
Mayor Petrola.
Yes.
Motion carries for the amendment. Now I'm going to take a vote.
Amendment if you like. So you have an opportunity to propose an amendment if you like.
To what's been amended, like me to add?
Yeah,
Or
if
you're
you want to
throwing
add
me off
anything,
there?
or if you want to take anything off, you still have the ability to propose it. So it's up to you.
Well, I proposed it already, so,
We didn't have a formal,
I'll vote.
yep. Again, if,
It's fine, yeah.
Now we're going to take a vote on the initial vote for approving the agenda as published with the inclusion of the mayor's discussion item on freebie and vice mayor's request for the discussion items on 8th Avenue parking and Hurley Park. So we're going to encompass it all. Commissioner Reznicki?
Yes, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
sorry.
I know.
I heard the
Uh-huh.
phone.
Same. Vice Mayor Lorenzen?
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Philps?
Yes.
Mayor Petrola?
yes,
The motion carries.
thank you. Do we have any general audience comments, please?
I think you have one.
Jerry, I go.
If you would like to make a comment, either general or to a
Jerry.
specific agenda item, there are yellow cards at the back. You can please fill one out, give it to the city clerk. The sooner the better.
Thank you. Jerry, I'm sorry.
Angelo.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I live at 2702 Passive Grove Way. I want to thank you again for this opportunity to speak on the flooding and drainage issue along our stretch of Passive Grove Way. At the last meeting, I reviewed the impact of the last 3 storms that caused significant flooding and property damage. And I provided some recent history, what seems to have gone wrong since the construction of the new Passive Grove Way and the underground batten tanks and tidal check valves that were installed at that time. So what I've learned since the last meeting is the installed drainage system was not designed to be serviced and maintained, which I still find hard to believe, but this is where we are. Public Works is proposing a new tidal check valve to be designed as a retrofit that can be serviced after it's installed. And our current commissioner, Rich, District 4, and the head of Public Works, Mike Clark, will support a project in the fiscal year 25 budget to have our drainage system repaired. So what I need from the city leadership, all of you, is your support.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you'll please stop the clock, thank you. If I knew who you were, I would ask you to leave. Again, we want to maintain the quorum. We want to give everyone the ability to be heard, so that when it's your turn to speak, you can also speak uninterrupted, so you can be clear and concise in what you want to communicate to the commission and to your fellow residents. So again, I will ask one more time, please silence your cell phones. Thank you. I apologize for the interruption.
Thank you. What I need from all of you is your support to approve the project that the head of the Public Works plans to submit at the next budget planning meeting. Our need is critical and urgent. The issue is now timing, when. And for me, it's concerning how long it'll take from selecting a contractor that's going to design this new valve to replace the failed ones, then manufacturing it, ordering it, and installing it. And that could take, several contractors and bidding to have this done. So realistically, we're probably talking several storm seasons before this actually can happen from front to back. So anything practical that can be done to expedite this will be greatly appreciated by our stretch of Pascal Way that's impacted by the flooding and drainage issue. In the meantime, is there anything that can be done in the interim? It would be helpful if Public Works could identify near-term actions that could at least improve some of the drainage issues that we have during flooding to reduce the water intrusion and property damage. I've inquired about the use of public reserves or budget reserves and what would it take to trigger it, but I haven't received a response that's being considered or being pursued at this time. And in closing, correction and repair of the drainage system requires all of your support in prioritizing our needs in the fiscal year 25 budget. We hope our presence here helps the commission support the proposed project when setting priority needs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mary McReynolds.
If you will please state your name and address for the record.
Mary McReynolds, 3103 South de Bazan. I lived in Paso Grill the last 11 years, and our landlord decided to raise the price to where we couldn't stay there any longer, so our 4-generation family decided to buy Entonces our place. We love our neighbors, and we're very peaceful in our neighborhood. However, as I have shown the commission with photos, we have had 8 inches and 7 inches of flooding in our home, respectively, last August and last December. Last night, I set my alarm for 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and 6 a.m. to check for flooding. In August, during a dahlia, a sewing machine on the table in the flooded living room caught fire. I ran down, stepped into the water, and unplugged it. We didn't die. Had we evacuated, the house might have burned down and fire trucks couldn't get in. Late the next day, we were able to get the water out, but not the stench of dog, human, and fish poop. I live right at the end of the park. This is a health hazard, along with the mold that sets up quickly. This is our forever home. We need the city to do all measures and maintenance to remedy the flooding because of the hazards of health. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Kurzman.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
John Kurzman, Bay Honda Way South. Can you zoom in a little better? On the screen rather than the keyboard, if you could. One item is in the minutes that you're about to approve for the June 4th workshop. I believe that we had more action items than simply defining the boundaries of the alcohol zone. I think, if anything, we wanted to get all the boundaries, and there may have been other action items. So I think that there should be some caution on the minutes, or at least make sure we cover that later. Also, I sent you a letter because I was very concerned at the last meeting. There was the comprehensive plan change that was made by Kimley Horn. And I know that the mayor had some concerns about making changes without, he wanted to make sure people really were able to study it or had credibility. And one of the things I think that was a serious credibility issue is, and this is the text from the closed captioning, at the bottom, they actually were saying that the text they were including was the exact text that the Florida statute requires. And so I understand that the commission would then look at that and go, well, if it's what the state requires, what are we arguing about? What are we even thinking about? However, if you go to the actual statute that they referenced in there, it actually tells you that you do not have to use that language. And a local government may adopt its own property rights element or use the following statement of rights. So essentially you were misled. And I have a concern when people make a decision based on misinformation. Should you revisit your decision or not? I can't speak for that, but I think it's a big concern when you're not given the correct information and they make a decision based on wrong information that could be material. And it also said in the ordinance, in the statute, that the state comprehensive plan shall be reasonably applied where they're economically, environmentally feasible, not contrary to the public interest. So I might suggest that that be put up as section 11. I mean, because they put that other text about private property rights as a whole section. Why not put this required text as a whole section? And the reason I'm concerned about the private property rights is, think about customary use and think about our beaches. We have a unique situation here. There's a reason that we have the opportunity to put special language in our ordinance. We don't want to just give it away and have people go, well, I have beachfront land, therefore I have the right to evict people off the beach. And that's the message that ordinance is written sends in the comprehensive plan. It was not an exact quote, and there were other changes made. For instance, they took away safety of the dunes. So there's some language that we had in their comprehensive plan about dune protection, struck out. Why is it stricken? I find it particularly coincidental because in our own beach ordinance, because it's a little confusing how it's redlined, they just deleted everything and then pasted it again. So rather than crossing out 94, like section 94, and changing to section 95 and leaving the text as is, it's all cut and pasted. So everything gets crossed out and everything gets written. And you can't tell that they took out dune protection there either. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. If there are no further audience comments, we will move on to item 3, the consent agenda. Can we please have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Anyone?
I motion to approve the consent agenda, items A, B, C, and D.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Lorenzen,
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Filtz,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki,
Yes.
Mayor Petrella,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have action items. The first one is 4A, the Don Cesar Boat Ramp feasibility location. Mr. Mike Clark, I believe you're up.
Good evening, Mike Clark, Public Works Director. With regards to the Don Cesar Boat Ramp feasibility location, we applied for and received a Florida boating grant to do a feasibility analysis of 2 selected locations, the existing location and the Cabrillo Avenue turn just around the corner. That study has been received. A public workshop was held recently. About 55 or so folks attended, along with all of our elected officials and much of the city staff, the city manager and myself, and the COO and a couple of others. And a conversation took place for a little bit over an hour. There was a question put on the floor for a hand vote, whether or not we wanted a boat ramp or not. And then the second question was, at what location would you like it? And everybody witnessed the results of that. The grant is still open. And the way to close the grant is to select a feasible location, one or the other. You can close that grant by formally not selecting a location. I mean, there are other options. But we do need to close the grant. And so the action before you is really what guidance would you like to give the city manager and the staff?
So for those who were not there, what was the outcome of that impromptu, unofficial vote?
So I announced it out loud, and my observation was that the majority favored having a boat ramp, and the majority favored having a boat ramp at its existing location.
Can you tell me exact numbers on that, Mike?
It was just a observation of the hands raised.
Because I witnessed the same observation via TV, because it was on a TV clip. So it's really hard. I didn't witness that there, and I wouldn't say it was hard to tell. It's like half the side. People were kind of arguing as to why are we raising hands. I also had surveys done that had more than 50 people who signed against it. So I hope that we're not thinking that that's what decides in doing this. Instead of, let's talk about this feasibility study first before talking about a meeting that was way past due, where some people raised their hand and some people didn't, and a lot of people, including myself, didn't really know what we were raising our hand for. So can we talk about the feasibility study first?
I thought the questions were crystal clear. The audience heard them crystal clear. The results, from my point of view, were accurate. So I'm telling you, Commissioner, I do not share your observations, but I am more than happy to discuss
I can show you a video
to the
clip.
very end all the questions that you may have on this.
Mr. Clark, I can show you a video clip. My question to you first is, you said this grant is still open. Is the grant expecting the commission to make a decision in order for you to have this final report for the grant? Are they expecting us to motion a decision for you? Is this how we close a grant? Is that what the expectation is?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see that on the application, so maybe you could share that, because I didn't see where it said part of the requirement is that the commission has to decide what location it is.
The purpose of the feasibility study was to do the analysis of two locations and to come up with a conclusion as to which one you would like or not.
Okay.
So here you are.
Can you go over the feasibility study for us, since we did not go over that at this meeting?
I'd be happy to. Are there any particular aspects of the study that you'd like to focus on?
Yes, both options, and if you want to look at the table on what's severe, moderate, what the whole study was about. Is that an appropriate location for this ramp?
So the feasibility study took a look at two locations, the existing location and the Cabrillo Avenue turn. And they took a look at it from a number of aspects, all delineated in the report, and came up with a series of statements as to how difficult would it be in which parameter they were looking at as to which location. Are utilities difficult here? Is parking difficult there? So there are a number of areas. Each of the locations is challenging in almost all of the areas identified. So there's no question that we have an engineering challenge, no matter which location we select. They are both buildable. We can engineer a solution. The real question is the public sentiment, I suppose, as to which location is preferred by the public, because from an engineering perspective, we can engineer both of them.
So from this study, do we have a true, accurate cost of what it would be for both locations?
There was a probable cost given for both locations. I think one was a little over $1 million, the other one was in the 900 range. Based on my experience, I'll take that at face value at this stage. A more comprehensive cost analysis would come during a comprehensive design of each location. I believe those numbers will go up. How much, I can't tell you, but regardless of which location is selected, I believe that the cost will go up, perhaps as much, I would opine perhaps at least 15%, perhaps more.
Is the current design designed to prevent flood in the area?
There is
Was
no
there-
design.
Well,
It's
the
a feasibility
suggested
sketch.
feasibility sketch, correct.
And either location would be at 5 feet NAVD 88 elevation. Yes, it would comply with our code.
But will it stop stormwater?
Yes, it would stop stormwater also.
So with that elevation, water will be able to still run through the outfall out into the McPherson Bayou.
We would design it to do exactly that.
So it's not designed in that particular feasibility study.
The feasibility study does not do design. It just says whether or not it's possible to build something at this location.
So we're not sure yet.
If you select a location, I will tell you that we will design it to evacuate stormwater and protect against floodwater.
Similar to Paso Grill, correct?
Similar to many of the locations in the city that we've done so far.
That are still suffering from stormwater.
I'm missing your point.
My point is that we're not sure from today's study all the information that we need as far as cost and whether designing that ramp is going to mitigate flood.
I just told you that we will design the flood at either location to the 5 feet level. And I told you that we will design it for stormwater evacuation and for flooding. That is what we will design. Either location, we'll engineer it. The issue before the commission for the grant is which location would you like us to pursue?
So in these designs, it's going to address safety, which is severe in both location, right? Intersection, pedestrian, zoning, which is residential. As far as I know, we're not zoned for commercial boat ramp or recreation. Parking is still put down as moderate because I think the study said of the 15 recommended, we currently are only putting in 12, so we're short 3. Stormwater floodplain clearly says severe, and alternative done is our ramp 1, alternative 2 severe. Utilities are moderate, but it's probably not identifying all the things that we probably would need to prevent stormwater. Not to mention on that intersection alone, I believe the Don Cesar Hotel is going to have to construct some kind of outfall for the stormwater vault that they're going to place in their parking lot. Riparian rights, severe, alternative 1. Riparian rights, alternative 2, slight, but possibly severe. Neighborhood concerns, severe. Traffic safety, severe on alternative 1, severe on alternative 2. Construction impacts for alternative 1, severe. Alternative 2, moderate, but we're not sure yet. Dredge and fill. Do we have a DEP application filled out and sent to DEP?
You haven't selected a location, so there's no way we could send that in.
Can we guarantee that they will even let us do?
Every step that's required under statutes of Florida State will be followed.
Okay, so in both, we're looking over $1 million in what this feasibility study says, but yet we really don't know what the true cost is. And with construction going up at the rate that it is, and this grant being, let's say, possible grant that we can get, which is, and Mr. Phillips mentioned earlier, it's not till the spring of next year.
That's
So-
because you missed the deadline.
No, not me, not me. I didn't miss the deadline. Okay, I've been involved with this for a very long time. I did not miss the deadline.
I'm
I'm
not
not
gonna argue with
responsible
you.
for that, Mr. Clark. I'm not responsible to meeting deadlines. I'm sorry. Okay? It is due next year, possibly, but we still don't know whether we are going to be awarded. It's a competitive grant. Okay? There's no assurance that we're going to get this grant, and it's only for design, not build out. So we're
That is all
talking a
correct.
possible 2 years, if any, that we're actually going to do construction, maybe, if we ever get that far, right?
You have
So
alternatives.
we have alternatives for,
You don't have to have the grant. You can go it alone. You can do it, the city can do it if they wishes, and they don't need the boating grant to do it.
so you're asking for us to get this as a capital improvement project?
I am only asking for a decision on the feasibility study tonight.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
What would the process be to see the feasibility at another location such as Egan Park?
I would be happy to write up a task order to the firm to go ahead and study any location that we can come up with. But it won't be covered by a grant. It'll be something that we'll have to budget in the FY25 or however the city manager wishes to address that.
But is that something that we can do right now? I mean, we don't need a grant to look for other viable locations, right? I know the community is for wanting to have a ramp. What I'm asking for is a ramp that prevents flooding in a neighborhood. You know, that's pretty severe and significant. So could we ask for another location to be looked, actively look in the city to find another location for a second ramp?
City manager?
Well, that's certainly something the commission could direct the staff to do, but that's not really the question tonight. But that's something that you could do if the majority of the commission does not want to pursue either one of these options that you were given in the feasibility study that the commission authorized. And you know, that's what Mr. Clark's looking for, is a direct. We need to know, do we need to close this grant out because we're not interested in either one of these locations? But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, the commission can authorize the staff to go out and hire a firm to look at the feasibility. Again, that's what we did with these two locations, to look at the feasibility of doing a ramp anywhere that you may have your sights on.
Mr. Clark, as a follow-up to that, did you consider any other locations?
We did. We considered other alternatives. One of them was not to do anything, and one was to not have a boat ramp at all. Another was Egan Park, and I do not believe staff came up with another viable location anywhere in the city that the city already owns enough land to make it even a worthwhile attempt.
So you did
But I'm
consider
open
other
to
locations?
suggestions. I'm sorry?
So you did consider other locations?
The only other location that came
I'm
up
saying
during
as in-
discussion was Egan Park.
So you mentioned that the new boat ramp would be at 5 feet?
Correct.
Is that the same as if there was a seawall there?
Yes.
Okay. Would a boat ramp at that location or the alternative location at the current location versus the second proposed location, would that be an improvement over the current situation for both safety and for flooding?
For flooding, yes. For safety, I think that's a subjective thought. People could argue either way.
Thank you.
I'd like to make some comments. Buckle up your seats and get a cocktail, because this may take a few minutes. So bear
All
with
right.
me here. Let me first start by saying, look, Don's is our place, folks, and some of the folks along Passive Grow Way, we all empathize with what's going on there. I don't think anybody's sitting here going, tough luck. I mean, it's a crappy situation. We all know it. And, you know, I understand the fear and anxiety that the residents have there. I think we all do. None of us would want to be in that situation, the whole flooding situation. I get it. We all get it. And, you know, I've already kind of pledged on my behalf that we'll do everything I can in my few remaining months, but in the FY25 budget, to look at things that are feasible, that can be done in the near time. But this evening, we're here, and this started in March, and I and the mayor and some others concurred to move this back a little bit so we could have time to have a town hall, which we had. So this isn't a new issue. It's been around for well over a year. So we're here tonight to focus on whether we keep the ramp where it is and improve it, or we move it to Cabrillo. Those are the two options that were put forward in March, and those are the same two options the staff's looking at us tonight. Look, we're a beach town, guys, and this, to me, is right at the crux of who we are as St. Pete Beach, all right? The Don Ramp's been there at least 80 years, all right? It was built in the 30s. Don't interrupt, please. It's been quoted, and it's correct, that the comp plan says, hey, you have to have 2 boat ramps for 10,000 people. So, you know, let's use a little common sense here. That kind of breaks into 5,000 people per ramp, right? So we got 1 ramp, that's 5,000. We got the Egan ramp, that's what, 3,800, 4,800? I'm losing track of the math here. So that, and then the Egan Park ramp was built in 92. So nobody in the city commission or the residents in 92 said, stop construction. We only have 8,900 people. We can't build a second ramp. That's just crazy. Come on, let's use a little common sense here, please. So that's a complete blue herring, that argument. All right, you don't build, you build for the future. You don't shrink things, okay? Our neighborhoods are not getting smaller. The houses are getting bigger. Every empty lot's getting built on. The demand for boats is not going down, it's going up. So come on, let's pay attention to what's going on. The idea that residents in Paso Grill and Vina are going to have to drive, one of the proposals was, well, just go down to Egan. So we're going to drive 20 to 30 minutes to Egan to use that little ramp especially during winter traffic, when we have a boat ramp that was built right there 80 years ago that folks like me who moved here in 1992 went, this is perfect. I have a boat ramp. It's a perfect situation. So we want to kind of reverse that whole thing. It doesn't make sense. And then put yourself in the shoes of the folks in Egan Park. I don't know if any of them showed up to the meeting or even aware of what's going on. So that's a single lane road, Captiva Circle, that goes past that little park. And now, if you want to close the Don Cesar ramp, all that traffic's going to go on that little road in front of all those townhouses and back up that ramp. Imagine yourself being a resident there. So to me, that's just ridiculous. One of the other ideas was, well, you can go over to Fort DeSoto and use that boat ramp. I went there Memorial Day weekend. All 300 of those slips were filled, or parking spots were filled by 9 a.m. They had 100, roughly, trucks and trailers that were then parked on the grass on the side of the road leading into Fort DeSoto. So that place is already at max capacity. Plus, you can do a 5-minute drive to our boat ramp, or you can go wait 40 to 60 minutes to launch on a busy weekend over at Don Cesar. That's not why we moved here. And I won't even mention the $100 fee you got to pay to get an annual pass over there. The other idea I keep hearing is, whoa, go use the high and dry at Paso Grill. Well, that's about $500 a month, which is about $6,000 a year, okay? Not everybody can afford to throw out that kind of cash. Some of us may. There's a lot of folks that live here that can't. We already talked about EMS and fire department. That ramp is there for emergencies, not just, well, I'm sorry, it's there for recreation, but it can also be used for emergencies. Picture a hurricane and a tropical storm, and everybody's trying to get their boats out of the water. And we're all going to go over to Fort DeSoto and compete with the mass of humanity that's going to show up there. That would never, ever work. A lot's been talked about the safety card. I swear, I feel like we're a society now. Every time we hear something we don't like, safety, safety, we're all going to die. I've never heard a list of any accidents or deaths that have happened in front of that boat ramp. Never heard of one. Okay, so the safety card, you have your turn. So the safety card, I think it gets thrown around as a way to shut down public debate. Hardworking commercial fishermen use that ramp, okay? Don't turn your back on them. The garbage issue, I get it. I don't like it either. I think the mayor talked about that the other day. That's an enforcement issue. The kayak rentals, get it too. It's an enforcement issue. If we don't like it, we can change that. I don't even like the idea of the Cabrillo area that's been roped off. I mean, that area has been used by the guys with the barges that fix your that fix your seawalls and all the other things. And now we're telling them they can't even park there. And where are they going to go if that ramp gets shut down? Okay, your cost just went up. And those are the very guys that are going to fix your new seawalls, right? In theory, when the new residential seawalls get built, those are the same guys. So now where are they supposed to launch? At Fort DeSoto? My family lives on 22nd Avenue. We've been there since 1992, and we are the absolute epicenter of traffic coming to the beach. They back up in front of my house all weekend long. We got weddings. We had horse and carriages crapping in front of our house, but we just laughed it off. We have bachelor parties. We have gourmet setups on the beach now. Everything you can imagine is in front of our face now. We knew it when we bought it in '92, and we just kind of go, it's the price of living in paradise, all right? St. Pete Beach is coastal Florida, all right? It's not some Orlando theme park where we all sit back and pretend that we don't live on the ocean, all right? It's a place for water sports, fishing, recreation. Most of the folks that grew up here or moved here that live in those neighborhoods saw that boat ramp, and that was one of the enticements of getting here. Ramp flooding, yeah, there's some ramp flooding. I mean, tonight's a classic example when I drove here, and I'm sure Commissioner Resnicki saw it as well. Some of the bad seawalls had water come over them. The ramp came up to the top of the ramp, and that was it. Okay, does it happen on king tides? Oh yeah, it does. I've seen that too. I've seen it go all the way across the intersection. I don't know if it was an inch, 5 inches deep, and I saw it going up to the gentleman's house that lives across the ramp, who just put in a brand new swimming pool, by the way. So it's a nice job on that. But that water goes right up to the edge of his property on those really couple horrible times. So yeah, I get that. And that's why I'm saying I'm in favor of keeping the ramp right where it is. I'll compromise if we want to spend the money to to modify that ramp. I'm not in love with it because, Mike, I know what's going to happen. It'll take a couple of years, got it. This resident seawalls will have to be reconstructed anyway, or it's going to flood around either way until everything's fixed. My concern is that if it takes, like the seawall, 6 months, 9 months to build that ramp, we're basically out of a local ramp for that whole period. So I kind of liked the Cabrillo idea for a while until I thought, well, geez, now we picked up a problem that some residents of Don Cesar Place don't like, and now we're going to shift it over to Cabrillo. And hey, it's like rugby. It's called a rugby buddy pass. When you're about to get something bad, you throw it over to the other guy, and he gets creamed with the ball. So I don't like the idea of transferring an issue. I like the idea of fixing the issue. And that's a legacy ramp. It's been there forever, and I think it needs to stay. Those are my 2 cents.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments for Mike?
Mike, could you refresh our memory on what the cost of this feasibility study was? I know there's a grant that's
It was 100% grant funded,
Grant funded.
approximately $127,000.
Okay. And so I guess my thoughts are that I don't see, I've looked at a map quite a bit, and I think that finding other locations on property that the city owns, like Mr. Clark said, staff couldn't find any. If we were willing to decide we wanted to buy a bunch of property to put a boat ramp on, there's probably some great locations, but I don't know that I don't know that
You
we're.
have $15 million
Right.
and Corey Avenue's available.
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't think we're in the position to do that. I also don't like the idea, we've sat up here for the last 4 months listening to people talk about how bad traffic is on Gulf Boulevard. And the idea of putting everybody that lives on the south end of the city with their boats and trailers, dragging them down Gulf Boulevard to go to a boat ramp on the north end of the island doesn't seem like it's taking one problem and turning it into a different problem. And I think that public access to the water in Florida is really important, and that's why we got this grant, right? Because the state also thinks that public access to the water is pretty important. And I'm not fortunate enough to have a house on the water, and I really appreciate the spots where I can access the water. I also don't have a boat, so I don't need a boat ramp. But outside of boat ramps, there is essentially nowhere that you can get in the water on the bay side of this island. There just isn't. I mean, there's places you can get in, you just can't get back out. So I think that keeping this boat ramp is pretty imperative. I don't have a real strong feeling about either of the 2 locations. Like Mr. Clark says, I think that either one can be engineered to be workable. Like Commissioner Lorenzen said, in some ways I kind of like the idea of the Cabrillo location, just because then the other boat ramp can stay open while that one gets constructed. But I don't know that I have a real strong feeling about that one way or another. I'm interested to hear what everyone else has to say about that.
Can I bring out a couple of points if no one, I don't want to be the only one talking about it, but
Sure.
I've been involved with this for way before being commissioner on this dais. The year built was incorrect by Commissioner Lorenzen. It hasn't been 80 years. And to give you a little history about what we now call the boat ramp, was not designed to be a boat ramp. The plat for the Don Cesar neighborhood, and if any of you did your homework and understand the history of what that location was an outfall. That was always an outfall. and actually I'll step back a little bit on that particular boat ramp, which we're calling Alternative 1. Before the bridge was built, the Bayway Bridge was built, there was very little access to getting to the south side of our island, our barrier island, okay? The Don Cesar Hotel was the Veterans Administration for quite some time. Bowman purchased that hotel to bring it back, for those of you who may know. During that time, again, access was very limited to our barrier island. In order to get construction material to the Don Cesar Hotel, they were using what used to be on East Maritana and the Bayway. Okay, that used to be an outfall just like all the other outfalls that are in the neighborhood. That was an entry point for construction material. When the Bayway started its construction, and I'm talking about the drawbridge Bayway, not the current one, okay? Another option was opened on the McPherson Bayou side as an access point for construction, okay? And that's how that started. I have pictures, and I wish I would have brought them with me, and most of you can see them. If you go to any historical archive, you could see there was always a seawall on McPherson Bayou with an outfall. Through time, and before we consolidated as St. Petersburg Beach, okay, that community, the Don Cesar town, its own township, could not afford the amount of money it would take to retrofit and fix all those outfalls. And through time, they fell apart. And through time, people believed that these outfalls were ramps because they looked like ramps, okay? You can still see some of the ones that have not been fixed, like the one on 36, okay? And if you didn't have that ending outfall where you could see a little hole, you know, where the water runs through, they all looked like ramps. And as a matter of fact, they had to add some red markers to prevent cars from driving into the water, okay? Those corroded through time as well. We consolidated. More time passed. I've been up here in that podium multiple times talking about all the historical documents, years and years and years of residents complaining about the broken outfalls. We also had on that podium people come up and talk about, well, let's support recreation. Why can't we use these outfalls as places to put kayaks in and out, paddle boards in and out? They look like a ramp, and that's exactly what happened on McPherson Bayou. Through time, and back in that time, we didn't have the kind of boats that we have today, okay? We didn't. And through time, somebody in the city, and there's no, and I searched for it, no information to show who actually approved on this city for that to be a boat ramp. There's no documentation. There was no community meeting. There was no change in land use. On this feasibility study, it states it is residential, just like any residential property that we can purchase and make it into a boat ramp. So is there a cost to find another piece of land to make a boat ramp? Absolutely. We can find any house that's on the water, buy that land, knock that house down, and make a boat ramp, according to what we did in the Don Cesar neighborhood, right? It's the same thing. We went on, and I still got very, very involved and had a conceptual plan, and I remember Mr. Clark talking and didn't go into depth about the water threats analysis and the conceptual plan that residents, for years, I've been coming up here for years talking about the flooding in our neighborhood, the thousands and thousands of dollars that are lost on people's property, the heartache that we have every time it's a storm, and you're going to tell me what's important is so we can pull out our boat on a hurricane? Are we going to be, and don't interrupt me, I didn't interrupt you.
I would there.
And that we can pull our house out of the water as well? There is other boat ramps. The Fort DeSoto is not the only boat ramp, okay? I am a boater. I also bought my home saying how nice and convenient it is that I have a boat ramp down the street. okay? But the difference is that I took into consideration all the people who live around that boat ramp who suffer every single time there is a flooding issue, okay? Every single time, okay? And we can't turn our heads away from those people either. Yes, there's a lot to do in the neighborhood, but we were in the process of doing. This feasibility study came about, you know why? Because we wanted to know whether we can build a ramp that would still mitigate flood, okay? We wanted to know for sure that if we were going to put a boat ramp there, it would mitigate flood. But in the process, it turns out that there's countless problems with having that there, okay? Safety issues. I can tell you another thing in history, someone in the residence that put a lot of work into even getting a sidewalk next to the Don Cesar parking lot, because there didn't used to be a sidewalk. And there's still, according to this feasibility study, done by engineers, professionals outside of this dais and outside of the staff who are here, that it's not safe. I do go through there. There's 5 streets that connect if you include that ramp. 5. West Maritana, Casablanca, Cabrillo, and the boat ramp. I've been on that intersection when there's a boat trying to come out and back up, when there's kids trying to cross the street, when there's kayakers showing up with 40 kayaks, loading them and putting them all across the street. And that's safe. And we're going to be okay that we may approve something without certainty that all of this is going to be addressed. I'm all for approving something that if you tell me all these things are going to be corrected, 100%. Great. Wonderful. But I also believe that we should be looking elsewhere, okay? Maybe there's a location that is safer for all of us to use, that doesn't cause the hardship that the people in that neighborhood are receiving all the time. Tides change every day. Happened today? Yes. It's a little water for you, but I've already had to fix 2 vehicles. You know, some people had to fix golf carts as well, you know. And for all of you who keep driving through that intersection thinking, oh, it's just water, good luck with that. You soon will need a new chassis as well, okay? It's not a place to have a boat ramp, okay? It is a residential neighborhood. The same that Paso Grill, Vina, or any other neighborhood doesn't want a boat ramp there for the same reason. It applies to us as well. We didn't want the Bay Ridge Bridge either. Look at history. We still got it, you know? And we have a big issue that we need to solve, okay? We do. We have a big issue on flooding in the neighborhood. But this was one of the steps towards that. That was the reason for this. We've been piecemealing a conceptual plan because we haven't done the whole picture at once. This was just one step of a big plan. You mentioned, or some of you mentioned commercial use. Yeah, there's been endless use commercial. Okay, free. No one pays. And I asked the city, how many people actually use this boat ramp? And I know one resident working with the city in conjunction with the city came up with 27 boat fees paid a year. Boat trailer fees, 27. So yeah, maybe there'll be a little bit of traffic going down Gulf Boulevard for 27 vehicles, okay? It doesn't make any sense. You know, we're about to close to spend more than $1.2 million, maybe, because in 2 years it will be more, okay? So, you know, I don't understand why we're not looking at the whole picture, why we're not being presented with the whole picture. People from all parts of the neighborhood, and I listen to people in Paso Grill too. I've had residents call me because they know I understand what's going on with the flooding. We need to understand that that is important. The comprehensive plan does not ask for 2 boat ramps, only 1, okay, according to the comprehensive plan and our population, okay? It is not far to drive to another boat ramp, and if you're evacuating your boat on a hurricane, the day of a hurricane, good luck with that, okay? I wish we could, or I do want to be able to propose that we do look in conjunction maybe elsewhere. I know this grant, it's a grant, so I know there's no cost for us to write a grant that we might not get next year, 2025. So, you know, if we want to write a grant to find a design, but I would also like to find a property that would be more suitable for a boat ramp that meets all the criteria on this study that was done. I wouldn't think that we would be high as receiving an award on a grant when this feasibility study says it's no good. I mean, as a grant writer or a recipient of an application, I think they would take into consideration this study and probably be a little bit confused as to why we're going to build a boat ramp in an area that clearly states in this feasibility study, severe, 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 severe.
So what year did the Don Cesar boat ramp get owned by the city?
Owned?
Yeah, when did we put the
In
city stamp on it?
consolidation.
Yeah, what year was that?
None. It wasn't a boat ramp.
So who's been maintaining the ramp? And who does the ramp belong to?
Well, I mean, you're asking me, like,
Well,
first,
you
there's
just-
not much maintaining, but when we consolidated as a city, that's when the city received
So
the
you,
property.
so you would admit that the boat ramp belongs to the city of St. Pete Beach, and it's been, I don't know if it was built in 80, 90 years, I couldn't find it anywhere, but let's say it was 40 years, and we've been using that at Egan, it belongs to the city, right? It's a city ramp.
I don't know why you're asking me whether who owns it.
You don't have to
It's-
know, just
we're
it's
part
a
of the
yes, no
city.
question. Is it a city ramp?
They inherited a piece of property. The city inherited a property. It was converted to what we call a boat ramp today.
Listen, I'm kind of tired of talking, to be honest with you. We've heard all kinds of conversations about flooding, outflows, people that used to go here, people used to go there, the history of this, the history of that. It's a ramp. It's been in use for decades, just like the Egan ramp, all right? And, you know, it's just, I've already acknowledged the flooding. I commiserate with it. We would like to do the best we can for the rest of the flooding with Don Cesar Place. But to shut down the boat ramp as if that's the cause of all the flooding in Don Cesar Place
Excuse me.
is not.
I'm not sure who keeps, gentlemen. Commissioner speaking. When it comes your turn to speak up front,
Anyway, I just think we understand the flooding issue. We all got it. There's nobody sitting here that doesn't understand the flooding issue and doesn't want to solve it. But to act like that ramp is the cause of flooding for all of Don Cesar Place, come on, please.
No one's saying that's the cause.
Well, then why do you want to shut it down?
flooding. If you knew there was any entry point coming into Paso Grill.
excuse me,
No,
Jennifer,
one
would
is-
you mind checking if the sheriff is
Okay.
outside and bring him inside? Oh, he's behind Mike. Mike, I'm so sorry. You were blocking my view. Next person who speaks, if you please escort them out unless you're called upon. Thank you.
I've got a couple
Yeah,
comments.
I'm done.
So, first off, I feel for the people who have flooded in the neighborhood. I think, besides the health of you as an individual or your family, I think one of the scariest things is damage to your property from natural disaster. So I get that. I want to kind of separate the issue of the flooding in the neighborhood with the boat ramp. I get the argument of how they can go together. But, you know, I think it's fair to say the boat ramp is not causing the flooding in the neighborhood. Is it a part of the solution as it currently is? No. So that's why we're talking about making improvements to it if that's where this goes. The other thing regarding the comp plan, the way I remember reading is it's 1 per 5,000 people, 1 ramp per 5,000 people, and mathematically we're closer to 10,000 than 5,000. I think the boat ramp is an asset to us as a city. I think it's an asset to residents and also, you know, for people in surrounding cities who come to our city and spend money here and spend money at local businesses. And I think having 2 boat ramps is important. Do I think it's a great location? Not necessarily. Do I think, you know, the argument about it being in a residential neighborhood? I'm big on managing expectations. How long has it been there? Well, we don't know the exact amount of time, but it's been there a while. You know, I feel most of the individuals who live around the ramp, it was there when they purchased. You know, and the concern I'd have with closing it and moving backwards, a big, not just because it's an asset to the city, but a big reason why too is in the event of a hurricane, people getting their boats out of the water. That's a scary thing, and whether it's 1, 2, 3 days before I've seen it, it's madness. So I think it's important for that reason as well. I would like to know more about the possibility of having it at Egan, but it sounds like that's not necessarily an option tonight, and then that involves more process, and that means the boat ramp is going to stay as it is right now longer. So now, those are some of my thoughts. It's a tough decision. You know, I get the arguments on both sides, but I do think it's an asset having it there for the city. And from the conversations I've had and people I've talked to, my understanding is it is used for emergency services from time to time, and whether it is or it isn't, that doesn't mean it wouldn't be in the future. So I think that's all I got for right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think it'd be appropriate to hear from the public. I mean, I certainly would love to hear from our residents and what their thoughts are on this issue. City Clerk, I assume we may have some comments.
Omar Chicoine.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record, please.
Omar Chickwen, I live at 3335 West Maritana Drive. Today's topic, I ask, are we but ostriches with our heads in beach sand? I cannot help but run that crazy number through my head over and over. 1.3 million. Are we insane, damn ostriches? Every time the boat ramp is mentioned, the discussion turns to flooding. People, we don't have an issue regarding that ramp. We have an ongoing issue regarding the flooding in our neighborhoods. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned recently a lack of solutions being presented. May I be so forward as to suggest the following. Instead of spending $1.3 million on a poorly located, unnecessary boat ramp, take that kind of cash. Start a program of splitting the cost of new 5-foot seawalls with those people in homes on the water. It's 50-50, city and homeowners. We, the people, have some commitment, both financially and regarding organization. Neighborhoods have to get together so we can minimize the supplier quotes by extending the number of feet of wall to be done. So, for example, on my street, we would get all homeowners on board that go from the boat launch to the first city-built spillway. That's step one, a minimum distance to be done in one shot. The city provides permits. The owners put up the cash, perhaps up front, and the city pays the second half of the bill out of that $1.3 million that we seem to be able to come up with as a grant for the first extended seawall is done. How do we maintain this fund? The people inside the area we are discussing, those that do not live on the water, you assess a tax, a sort of special tax levy that goes into that fund. Perhaps it's only $500 per year, maybe $1,000, but they all benefit to the value of their homes and the savings on insurance and repairs, specific addresses providing cash to specific neighborhood funds. Also, of course, we continue to chase federal and state and perhaps county grants. Maybe we achieve. Okay, an example of numbers. Distance from ramp to spillway, ballpark, 480 feet. Let's use $500 per foot. That's $240 grand. $120,000 from we the people. $120,000 from the city fund. We closed down that unnecessary ramp for far less than $1.3 million. Good grief. Fix a terribly located boat ramp and turn a blind eye to the real issue that really needs the influx of cash, that really needs our focus, as flooding is the issue we all face. Let's let common sense reign, get our heads out of the sand, out of the beach sand, and get started. There you are, a solution.
Thanks, Omar.
Ed Kima.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Ed Kima. I live in Don Cesar Place. I don't want to, is this what I do? Oh, this one. Okay, got it. I don't want to beat the engineering study to death. You've spent a lot of time on it. And you know that the engineering study said that this ramp is bad from a number of points of view. The comprehensive plan calls for one ramp, and the city spent a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, for a report that was so long I couldn't even get through 5 pages of it, called the Resiliency Adoption Plan, and it calls for the relocation of the Don Cesar boat ramp. Reason being, Don Cesar boat ramp floods Don Cesar Place. In listening to you, it's really sad tonight for me to listen to you guys speak, because we're talking about making a decision for the greater good. The boat people are pretty vocal, but there's not many of them. 200 people in Don Cesar Place voted to have the boat ramp closed. Mike Clark didn't count them in his show of hands, but he did count some households where both the husband and wife might have been there, so they counted as 2, whereas I went there and I was the only one representing my household, and I only counted as 1. Anyone who's done any research knows that that whole thing was a sham, because Mike wants to focus on these 2 locations, and he did so from the beginning of that meeting. And that was a show. Only 27 boat trailer permits are issued by the city. 200 people in Don Cesar Place wanted the boat ramp closed. And here's another example. The boat ramp is used 97% by non-residents. 97% of the usage of that ramp is by non-residents. And while I respect Florida being a state that runs on tourism and the city being a city that runs on tourism, how would you like an amusement park in your neighborhood? The comprehensive plan basing the number of boat ramps on population, you might as well base it on the number of ice cream cones sold, because it doesn't matter with the population, because the population doesn't use the boat ramp. As far as the contractors, this is what the contractors do: trespass on private property. The city has had a lack of due diligence. This is the email that I got from Mike Clark showing that no exploitation of an alternate location was done. This was prior to the town hall meeting. Do your due diligence. Look for another location. And vote for the greater good.
Thank you, sir.
We're talking about convenience versus necessity.
Marty LaFond. And as Mr. LaFond comes up, as you know, our email isn't working, so I couldn't get the request to speaks that we normally do, and then I would forward them to you. IT was able to go on the back end of Civic, since it's used on our website, and pull them. And I just wanted to acknowledge these individuals. This is not something I normally do, but because of the circumstances, they all are echoing Mr. LaFond's sentiments this evening, so I just wanted to acknowledge them. Julie Pilecchia, JD Pilecchia, Carolina Rosenbach, Margaret Rinker, and Jorge Morales.
Thank you, City Clerk. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Marty LaFond. I live at 3200 Gulf Boulevard. I'm also the president of Marina Bay Condominiums. This is a 40-unit complex that is on Gulf Boulevard and 3111 Pass-a-Grille Way. We're also part of the Don Cesar Owners Property Corporation. You know, the Public Works Director presented the Stantec Consulting Service feasibility study that was done on the current boat ramp location and the proposed location 400 feet south on Cribillo earlier this year. The feasibility study come back with overwhelming evidence that both locations were terrible choices to make a financial investment in. How can you make a conscious decision and direct your staff to either of these documented poor choices to go and move towards? I'd like to suggest that the commission give direction to your staff to re-engage Stantec. Have your trusted advisor do a feasibility on several alternative locations. Your trusted advisor will provide the commission with a new study that could be viewed more positively by all. This will make your financial decision where to invest obvious. The data provided to you by Stantec today again shows why you should not move forward with either the current or proposed location. And it should not go without saying that no study was done by Stantec, again, you've heard this, on actually who uses the boat ramp. Ed was just up here talking about the studies that have collected data showing the overwhelming use by commercial businesses and non-registered Pinellas County boaters. Boat traffic is only going to increase in the future as St. Pete Beach grows. So why invest in a poor decision for the future that will impact, by the way, a designated bird sanctuary that's owned by the Audubon Society? With the evidence from the study, the solution should be to close the Don Cesar boat ramp, move it into a location that is more suitable and makes financial sense. I respectfully ask you to direct your staff to find a new solution. Re-engage Stantec to study alternative locations. The commission should avoid making a bad decision to move forward on either location based on the data that was provided by your trusted advisor. Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you, sir.
Michael Welch.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. And I live on Zanzibar Place.
And your name,
excuse
please.
my interruptions, but this is enthusiastic.
Mike, I know who you are, but if you wouldn't mind stating your name for the record.
Michael Welch.
Thank you, sir.
Almost everybody has said something that I agree with tonight, and many people have said things that I totally disagree with, starting with Mike. This feasibility plan for 120,000, you automatically times that by 10 or 12 if you want to get anywhere near the cost of a project. I've enjoyed that boat ramp for years. I've been living in the neighborhood for 25 years. As the commissioner pointed out, the houses are getting bigger, the boats are getting bigger, the trucks are getting bigger, and the traffic is unbelievable. There must have been 40 kayaks there last night and 40 people standing around, which you really have to be careful driving through. We could fix the flooding on that boat ramp and the berms around it with probably the neighborhood doing the shoveling. It would take about a foot to keep the water at this moment from coming over. The water's rising. We all know that. It's not going down. Let's start treating things with some kind of practicality. This state has been totally destroyed environmentally because of Corps of Engineering thinking. And that's just a fact. If you disagree with it, you don't know the real facts. When I heard that proposal to put more digesters in the outfalls, it makes me ill. To get rid of water, all you need is an opening to lower water. And you need something that closes that thing when the water gets higher to keep it out of the neighborhood. We have a situation with the DOT that I've been dealing with for I don't know how many years, ever since the new bridge was built, though, that doesn't change. They don't do anything. Nothing happens. Another study is done, another proposal that is so over the top. We have ski jumps in our neighborhood now that are supposed to be drains that don't work. We have one old-fashioned ramp. It's concreted. It used to be dirt. And that's the way everybody put their little boats in, because boats were little. An 18-foot boat. I had a 19-foot boat when I was many, many years ago, and that was the biggest boat around. Everybody else had 16s. Okay. Over-engineering things doesn't accomplish anything except expenditure of money and then maintenance. When they built, all right, you get the picture. It's, I'm now in agreement with getting rid of the boat ramp, period.
Thank you, sir.
Luis Mansali.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Louise Monsalve, 2600 Paso Grill Way.
Thank you.
I'm in favor of keeping the boat ramp exactly where it is and where it has been. I've been a resident here more than 50 years and have used that boat ramp for more than 40 years. When we first moved here 25 years ago, we looked at purchasing on 3309 Maritana. It's a two-story yellow house. Did not purchase there for the flooding. So the flooding is something that's been going on quite some time, obviously. And today at 2 o'clock, may I place these here? This is a photo of Maritana, and it's already breached the seawall. It's at 2 o'clock today. We have no king tide. Here's, I believe this is Mr. Homer's property. It's breached there. Here is your boat ramp, and we are not flooding into the street. So I'm in agreement with keeping the boat ramp where it is and keeping our tax dollars or how the money goes into repairing the boat ramp exactly where it is. Fixing the seawall is obviously important, but that, to my knowledge, is private property, and I'm not sure how you can go about forcing that or making that happen, but making the boat ramp, 5 feet where it needs to be, you would need to fix everything around that, or the citizens would need to be responsible for their own personal private property. We did not buy in that area because of the flooding. So, I mean, it would be the reason I wouldn't buy next to an airport for the airplane noise. It's been there. You bought there knowing what you bought. My final comment is District 3, Ms. Betty, I would like to ask for her to recuse herself from the vote, as she seems to have started this years before she actually had a vote or the ability to cancel this boat ramp. And I think it's a personal issue and not one that she can vote as a commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Reznicki.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Jeff Reznicki. I live in Don Cesar Place. In addition, I'd like to mention that I'm a licensed civil engineer and I'm licensed in the state of Florida. And as part of my job, I actually commission engineers to perform studies. I've worked for 2 different municipalities in doing stormwater studies and design and traffic studies, so forth. And so it's interesting to me that the city would pay for a study. The study basically outlines that both of these locations are not anywhere near good alternatives, but we're discussing selecting one. On page 1 of the report, it even says that there are safety issues there. Anybody who's been walking through that intersection has seen the dangerous situations that come up on a regular basis. There's no pedestrian crosswalks from across the street to the boat ramp, so you have pedestrians walking through there, boats backing up, putting boats in the water, tourists trying to drive through there and figure out where they are. So for me, this is an opportunity to resolve a problem, and we're basically saying, yeah, we know there's a problem, but and it's been there a long time, so that's okay, so we're going to allow it. And as an engineer, I don't have that. If someone comes to me, which they do often, and they ask, what should we do? And we base it on research, just like these feasibility studies, and we make a decision. And the decisions have to be based on the results of the study, not how people feel about something. I know that's important, but it really, in my opinion, shouldn't be part of the decision in keeping a facility that's clearly was never designed to see the use that it's seeing now. I mean, it's been established that boat ramp was put there a long time ago, and I guarantee it wasn't designed to ever see the use that it's seeing now. So to try and prop it up and keep using it, it really doesn't make any sense financially or from a design standpoint or access standpoint. And there's no good reason, actually, to keep the ramp there, in my opinion. It just doesn't make sense. Now, of course, the issue of stormwater comes up. From looking at the feasibility study, sure, they're going to raise the ramp elevation between 2 and 3.5 feet. So what that will do is stop runoff from coming up the ramp. But you still have the issues with the seawalls adjacent to it. And also, the way I see this working, because I see these kind of designs all the time, they're going to put curb inlets on either side of the bottom of the ramp, which are going to be connected to pipes to McPherson Bayou. And guess what's going to happen? The same thing that happens now at all the other outfalls. You're going to have runoff stopped when the tides are high, and even if they put the valves there, and then we get the picture. It's not going to solve the flooding problem either.
Thank you, sir.
Deborah Scheckner?
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Deborah Scheckner, Bocasega Isle Drive, St. Pete Beach. I have a question as to why the kayaks are still there if they don't have a business occupation. They've not been approved by the city, and it's been going on for quite a long time. I don't know where the process is to stop that commercial situation. I will say that the boat ramp, as it is now, I don't know if anybody's been on it lately, is extraordinarily slippy. Somebody is going to get hurt, and somebody is going to sue the city. And I happen to know somebody who just, was going on the boat ramp the other day, a resident, who was, quite shocked at how bad it was because they hadn't been there in a while. As to where a boat ramp should go or not go, you really do need to fix what you have there regardless. And you have to figure out a way so that maybe it becomes a resident-only boat ramp, open certain hours, to mitigate the noise and the lack of quality of life for the residents who have to deal with that all day long. I don't know where you go from here because we do need an emergency ramp. I'm not sure if the fire chief has another one a little bit south on Passiger Way. I seem to remember there was something over there. So we do need to look at it maybe as a very, very limited boat ramp. But right now, quite frankly, I don't think anybody should be using it because I think it's a liability for the city. And I don't know where you would put another boat ramp, but I do really worry about not only emergency rescues, but the fire department has also used that boat to help put out house fires. And so there is a safety aspect to it. But the city needs to seriously look at it because somebody's going to get hurt one of these days. And I'll leave that to those who do this kind of a job. But really, we need something for emergencies. If that's all it's going to be used for, then let it be used for that. And if we only have 27 people who are registered with the city using the boat ramp, that's a very minor amount of people if that's how we decide to go forward. Very limited use rather than and also fixing the berms so that people don't get flooded. But there are safety issues for our community, meaning fire department, et cetera, and there's safety issues right now because somebody's going to get hurt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Garshaw?
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Kathy Garshaw, Casablanca, Don Cesar Place. So I think you've heard a lot already, so I won't belabor, but I did want to share a couple of things because, first of all, I think if we have a study and we want to get it paid for, I think we need to close it out so that we don't have to foot that bill. Closing it out, in my opinion, is also a statement of we are not making a decision on a direction. That is a decision. So as far as studies go in history is, I don't know, sorry. So 2020, we had a sea level rise adaptation plan, right? 2021, we also provided a summary, or the team did here in the city, water threats analysis mitigation study. So we got a lot of studies, right? In the studies, I get extra time. So it shows an adaptation plan. In that, I'm highlighting, note, boat ramp to be relocated or replaced by open outfall. So there's solutions, and these are things that you all commissioned to have work done back in 2021. Then in 2024 fiscal year plan in October, you said that these are all the things that you would do for the Don Cesar neighborhood, of which one of them is design actually for the replacement of the boat ramp, include flood mitigation concept. The word design is there, not a study. It said concept design for a living shoreline for the entire Don Cesar neighborhood. These are your words, the city's words. Retrofit of existing stormwater check valves to improve the performance of the Don Cesar neighborhood. Installation of the new stormwater check valves in the Don Cesar neighborhood. Construction of a living shoreline and a street drainage improvement at the 36th Avenue stormwater outfall structure. Public-private partnership to install a living shoreline seawall in the Don Cesar neighborhood. Those are written down things that you said you would do this year in your plan. And so I think that while this boat ramp consumed a lot of energy and time, it's really kind of sad because we have such a big job that we really need to be getting done and focused on and turning this into an action plan. So to help you with that, we do have a petition that we put together. We have 180 signatures. We've been able to connect them all with at least 119 of them, very specific to being residents in the Don Cesar neighborhood. I will leave this here, and it states that we need the city to complete all of the fiscal year 2024 commitments to the Don Cesar neighborhood by end of this fiscal year. And the second thing is, we need the city to define an executable comprehensive plan to address the Don Cesar neighborhood flooding and resiliency and review this with the homeowners by the end of this calendar year. We want to see it. It's not limited to, so go beyond this. But it is a request that we would see raising of, what does it take to raise the seawalls? You all will be able to read this. We need funding support. We need you all to work with us on it. Thank you. I have left a copy for everyone. Thank you.
Stephen Stewart?
If you please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Steve Stewart, 250 Julia Circle South. Been living out here since 1970. Bought my home from my parents. When I look at this, my son-in-law is a fireman on Paso Grill. They use the ramp. The ramp is a resource, not only to the residents, but to people that serve the residents, and it should stay where it's at. What I see is a problem, which I see in this country all along, is that we have people who make decisions. No one forced anybody to buy a house in Don Cesar. The boat ramp was there. They know it was a flood zone, yet they bought. So if you're not happy with the flooding and the solutions, make your choice. Move or not talk about it anymore. Because the flood zone, the boat ramp is not flooding your neighborhood. It's because a choice was made to buy a property in probably one of the lower areas on the beach. I'm not an engineer, I don't have studies, but all I see since living here since 1970, people come here and they immediately want to change what brought them here. So if you made a choice to buy in that area, abide by your choice. You made that choice, live with it. As a resident and someone who's served on boards here, I really don't appreciate the attacks on the staff and getting up and sending nasty emails. There's no civility. So again, you made your choice, you chose to live there. If you don't like it, make your choice and leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill LaFond, did you want to speak? Okay.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Jill LaFond, I live at 3200 Gulf Boulevard. It's so disappointing. I stood up here 2 months ago to see the tail wagging the dog. We're like trying to make a decision because we applied for this feasibility study. When Mike Clark stood before District 4 at a town hall about 1.5 years ago, he said a feasibility study would be done and multiple locations would be considered, not 2. And we've got 2 locations that were considered. We hear about this outflow system and the scuppers that aren't working through Paso Grill and Don Cesar. We've got so many other things that aren't working, and now we're looking at spending money on a boat ramp, which a feasibility study has said neither location was good. It's just, when the new city manager comes into office, I think there need to be some considerations about the staff that is running this. because we have so much flooding in the city. And yes, Betty's been up here. I'm in District 4, I'm not in District 3, but I respect Betty for how much she's been doing in terms of trying to help, you know, the community in the flooding. It just doesn't seem like there's a great priority for the projects, and that's very disappointing. You know, there should be some better hierarchy of things getting done. And I think if Betty's going to be asked to recuse herself from this vote, then I think anybody who's on the commission who has a boat should also recuse themselves. I mean, I do think what's fair is fair. I personally took offense to somebody in District 4 making that statement. I just don't think that's really fair. This thing is it's kind of a mess, honestly. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Mary McReynolds? You had number 4, so I wasn't sure. I wanted to make sure you got your time. John Kurzman?
The camera again. Zoom in on the screen, it would be helpful. Instead of the keyboard, they could zoom in a little. John Kurzman, Bahia Honda Way. I'm going to start mostly with facts, because I heard some questions asked. First off, this is an article from 1980, Historical Museum. It said repairs to the boat ramp at the Don Cesar. Okay? So we know it was there, but it also says in 1980, because of its extremely deteriorated condition, the commission unanimously voted to proceed with the work. So in 1980, they did work because it was already deteriorated. Now, going forward to 1982, people talk about the intersection of Casablanca and West Martana took on the aspect of a busy loading dock. Cars and boat trailers jockeyed for position of the boat ramp. So 82 was busily used, and they mentioned that they believe that the boat ramp was installed about 10 years or earlier. So now I think we know about 1972. So if you bought your house before 1972, understandably, maybe you didn't know about the boat ramp. Comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan was discussed. The comprehensive plan says, just like if you have basketball court for every 5,000 people, if you have 7,500 people, you don't just have one basketball court. You have 2. You can't have half of a court. You can't have half of a ramp. So once you go over 5,000, you have 2. That's what this calls for, and a ramp means a separate ramp. That's in the comprehensive plan. There was discussion about 27 people with boat trailers, or permits. You don't need a permit to use the ramp. You need a permit because if you choose to leave your boat at the parking lot all day, you might have to pay $25 a day at the Egan Park and the Don boat ramp. It says attached boat trailer only $25 a day. But if you don't want to do that, you can go for $75 a day, $75 a year, and get the T permit. So that doesn't mean you're leaving your trailer there all day. It doesn't mean you're not using the ramp. This was something that Betty actually was associated with a while back, but this was about the flooding. This isn't about the ramp. This is about the flooding. And this is my opinion piece now. You got to separate the ramp from the flooding. Flooding's horrible. We got to talk about addressing flooding or who's responsible for flooding or getting it taken care of. But that's not the boat ramp. Now, in the study, I don't know how you can make a decision. It said alternative 1 is the existing Don Cesar ramp, and alternative 2 is the intersection of Casablanca and Cabrillo, but it says moving the ramp to Casablanca and Cabrillo. How do you price moving when you only include, and this is my slide from March 12th, it says alternative 2 relocates the boat ramp approximately 400 feet south at the turn in Cabrillo Avenue. Well, how could you say that it includes the relocation, if you don't include the cost of recommissioning the old ramp location to be a seawall or whatever it's going to be? So you don't have the data, even if you decided to move it to Egan or move it somewhere else in the city. Part of moving it is actually remediating what's there. And I don't see the study, even since March, being updated to give you that data.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're open to further discussion or a motion or?
Can I just put one, because some of the residents, a couple of residents had mentioned emergency services, and I don't know if Chief Kilpatrick is here or not, but I did ask whether the city, I remember someone at a community meeting mentioning that they used the boat ramp, but I did directly ask him, and he said, he actually didn't say, he showed me a hand and said 0. They don't use, the City of St. Pete Beach Fire Department does not use the boat ramp, and I don't know, if you could verify that, city manager, but I know I asked him personally.
I had a discussion with Fire Chief Kilpatrick about that, because I didn't know when the question came up. And he informed me that they do use that boat ramp on occasion. It's not something that they use every day or even every week, but they do use it on occasion to launch some of their craft. They also use it when they're maybe out on a rescue, bringing someone in. That may be the closest place to bring someone in. So our fire department does use it on occasion.
Mayor. 2 more cards.
2 more cards.
Yes. Al.
Friendly.
Al. Bobellis.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Al Bobellis, 4010 Bella Vista Drive, and I also own Paso Grill Marina. I don't think a day goes by where we don't get a call of where's the boat ramp, or you know, how do you get your boat in the water? So this argument that it's not useful or people don't use it is ridiculous. You know, the whole marine community relies on these boat ramps. So that part of it is like a non-starter. That boat ramp's been there forever, so I don't really get that argument. But when I bought my house on Bella Vista, it was because I couldn't afford Vina Del Mar or Bright Waters. Everybody knew it flooded. You know, Maritana floods all the time, but Bella Vista's been flooded 8 times since I've been there. No one's up here worrying about that. But this boat ramp where everybody needs and uses, and because of flooding, I don't get that. The other thing was today, Mike Clark was on TV, and he was talking about everything in the city, the goal is to be 5 feet on the seawall. Well, these ramps accomplish that. So pick one. You know, it's the 5 feet, that's what you're gonna do citywide. A major flood isn't gonna change anything. It's still gonna flood. You know, if we get a 1, we get a 2, we get a 3, nothing matters. Even a depression is gonna flood. We had flooding today on Paso Grill. Paso Grill floods just as bad as Maritana. Bella Vista floods everywhere. So I don't, you know, we got an amenity and we want to throw it away? I don't agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Craig Stephen.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Craig Steffen, and I live in Don Cesar Place. And the only thing I'd like to say about the boat ramp is that if we're going to put it in, let's put it in differently than it is. It's got to be raised higher. It's got to be higher than the road level. And if it's higher than the road level, once that water breaches that new boat ramp, where's that water going to go? Is it going to just sit in the street for the next 2 weeks? Or is it actually going to drain out? You know, and as far as the location, I don't really want it. I would vote against it myself, you know, because of all the traffic and the boat ramp, or the boaters that are putting their boats in. There's sometimes 2 and 3 people doing that at the time. You know, and so they're just sitting there. And then you have the kayakers, of course. You know, we've all discussed all that. But I just, and as far as the flooding in the neighborhood, I've lived in the Don Cesar neighborhood for 35 years. And it's been the last 2 years that I've ever flooded. You know, everybody says, oh, everybody knows that the Don Cesar neighborhood floods. Well, it's had water in its streets, yes, but it's never flooded everybody's homes. And everybody that's on the ground has all had flooding. You know, so there's something that needs to be done. We need a comprehensive plan, like Betty said, for the whole thing. You can't just keep on piecemealing things and think that's going to solve the problem. You have to have a comprehensive plan where you put the seawalls in. If you want a boat ramp, it's got to be redesigned so that it also, I guess it would be a compromise between the boaters and the people that live in the Don Cesar neighborhood, the ones that don't want it. Because, it's just, it can't work the way that it is now. And as far as flooding, when you get something higher than a high tide, if you get a king tide, that water comes right up the boat ramp, runs down Casablanca Avenue, and then it cuts off my egress and ingress into my neighborhood. I can't get in or out of it, because of that. And that's the only way that you're going to get in and out of that neighborhood is on DeBasin Avenue off of Casablanca. So to say that the boat ramp doesn't flood the streets, that's incorrect. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if the timing is right, I'd move to approve, make a motion to approve locating the replacement of the existing Don Cesar boat ramp at Don Cesar boat ramp.
Which of the two locations, if you wouldn't mind just being
Don
clear?
Cesar boat ramp, keep it where it is and renovate it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'll second.
City Clerk, if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call.
Commissioner Filtz?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki? No. Vice Mayor Lorenzen?
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
Thank you. Next, we have action item 4B, stormwater pump station Don Cesar neighborhood. Mr. Clark, I believe you're up again.
Your Honor, Commissioners, the project is to position a future pump station at this particular location that is also going to receive one of the new outfall structures that have the improved baffle box and tide check valve vault combination. What we're trying to do is, in the near term, prevent tidal flooding and stormwater issues at that particular location by putting the outfall structure in place. And then in the longer term, if we do put a pump station in that location, which is what the proposal is, we want to make sure that that pump station is engineered to fit with the current infrastructure. So we're doing some long-range planning here to make sure that everything's compatible and we don't have to go back out and rip something out or redesign it.
So this is specifically for moving the design forward?
Yes.
Any questions for Mike? If you would like to make a public comment, please fill out a card and hand it to the city clerk. She has a lot of cards. I doubt she'll be able to pull yours out. If you want to come show her, that's fine.
Craig, is it Craig?
Yes.
Okay, come on, Craig.
Okay, Mike, where are you?
If you wouldn't mind waiting until you reach the mic and stating your name.
Craig Steffen. I live in the Don Cesar place. And I just have a question for Mike.
Certainly, if you wouldn't mind addressing the, sir, if you wouldn't mind addressing the commission, we do not.
I'm sorry. I was going to ask Mike because he was the one that was talking.
We can ask those questions on your behalf.
Okay. Where exactly would he put those pump stations? Would he put them on the spillways, or would they be in the park, or where are they going to be?
We can ask that question once you're done with your public comments.
Oh, well, that was my, that was my question and public comment.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mike, where would you put those stations?
Hence the reason for a concept design.
Thank you.
It will be in the general vicinity of that T intersection I believe it's East Maritana and whichever one comes out of Lazarillo Park. Yeah, the one by your house and
That's the basin.
the basin, yes. There's a T intersection there. And so someplace in that proximity is a proposed pump station of the future.
And what would the pump station be used for?
To evacuate stormwater. So in a built-out situation where all of the seawalls of the neighborhood are elevated, we now have a stormwater evacuation scenario. And so the pump stations would be evacuating the stormwater, and the tide check valve systems would be preventing tidal influence from coming through the seawall.
Thank you. Any questions for Mike?
Mike, these are for the existing outfalls, right? The ones that, because you said the one on the basin, so this is for the ones that don't have a current structure, correct?
This is one particular location at that intersection, which does not yet have an outfall structure, one that we are, at the improved version of the outfall structure will be designed simultaneously with this project by the same firm. The reason this really came up was we had a parallel project going on, and we did not expense all of the funds for that particular design by this firm. And so we wanted to repurpose those funds and go ahead and partner with these two projects together, so that in a long-term vision, we get it right early on. And I see this particular location as being fungible to the other locations where we would propose stormwater pumps at the outfall structures. So this is going to set the footprint for long-range thinking.
So just the one on the basin and South Maritana, East Maritana? Is that the, I don't know if you have your stuff with you, if you can show, but I just want to make sure if you're just saying one, because it says 30% design, and I'm not quite sure what the 30% is.
30% design is a concept sketch that shows that a future pump station would fit with the outfall structure that's going to be also designed and built. We want to make sure that the placement of these structures, they all fit, and the piping between them, futuristic piping and things of that nature, that they're compatible and it all fits.
And when you talk about design, you're talking back in that original conceptual design that, was it Hoff and I forgot the other two groups?
Hoff did both, and the original conceptual design had pump stations in Lazarillo Park.
Right.
And now what we've done is we've turned that design into, as we did a second study, we turned that design inside out and we put the pump stations on the perimeter. That saved us a lot of funding in re-elevating roads and redirecting stormwater and things of that nature. It cut the cost of the future project down considerably.
Any further questions for Mike? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve item 4B, stormwater, pump station down Cesar neighborhood, 30% design.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Woznicki?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lorenzen?
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Mayor Petrola?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we have item 4C, the outfall rehabilitation, 5 locations down Cesar neighborhood.
So we were talking about this in the previous item, where we have 5 locations where we have built outfall structures. People like to call them the ski ramps or the slopes or whatever, that's fine. And we have discovered over time that the tide check valve by itself at the outfall structure, where we're right on the bay, is subject to debris clogging it open, therefore it doesn't work, or we have marine growth that will latch onto it and similarly blocking it open. So the amount of maintenance it would take to keep that thing working perfectly so everybody would see that is extraordinary. It's just not something that we can resource. And so as we got to thinking about the causation of why the valve doesn't work from the debris and the marine growth, we separated the two out. And we talked about the marine growth. And so if we bring a tide check valve back into a darkened and more freshwater environment, it's not conducive to the marine growth. If we place that tide check valve behind a baffle box, then all of the debris settles out before it reaches the tide check valve. And if we place that tide check valve in a vault that allows for quick disconnects on a short section of pipe to be brought to the surface on a crane truck and then maintained on the surface, then we've improved our maintenance posture dramatically. And so those are the two concepts going into the thinking behind what we're trying to do here in order to protect our neighborhood in a more reliable fashion.
Mike, where would the baffle box be in relation to the ski jumps, for lack of a better term?
Pretty much everything will be out in the T area of the intersection in front of these outfall structures. They'll be under the street.
Okay. And are these are the same things we're talking about, that cradle-style unit where we'd pull out the bad, put in a new one that's got eyelets on it so the maintenance can pull it out? Are we talking about the same thing here?
Yes.
Okay. And I see that we've got the 5 for Don Cesar neighborhood, which I completely back 100%. Would that, once that cradle style is developed, would that be the same thing that we then implement along Passerville Way for the flooding on the seawall area there?
Yes.
Okay. And that would come at a later time?
I'll be bringing that forward in a future commission meeting as soon as I get the task order back from the design firm.
Thank you.
So at this stage, we're looking at a new design. If this motion, if this gets approved, then we will have a design phase later.
This is the...
Sorry, we will have a bidding process later to actually do the work.
Correct.
Okay. It's... I don't want to be the one that says, like, who's at fault here, right? But it seems like we spent very recently a lot of money to put those ski jumps in. And so, one of the questions I think is prudent to ask is, why is it not working? I mean, I assume at that time we had a similar design, the same process that we're having right now. Somebody designed it, somebody bid it, got approved, it got built. What happened? I know you and I have had this conversation, but I think it's important that, our residents understand what the history of it is and why we're here talking about rehabilitating something that's, was it 2 years old, 3 years old? Yeah.
So I think it's important to separate the structure itself and what it looks like from the tide check valve. Okay, the two are completely different. They just happen to locate in the same space. The outfall structure is the section of the seawall is owned by the city. And so if we're going to touch it, then we're going to bring it to code, which means it's coming up to 5 feet. We chose to do that at the time as a demonstration project so everybody in the neighborhood and other neighborhoods could visually see and feel what 5 feet NAVD88 looks like. So it's a demonstration of height. The fact that it's got wing walls on it is merely for a structural stability issue. They would not be required if everybody else was doing their thing. We'd have helical tiebacks instead. So that structure was done largely for that purpose. Now, it just so happens that we have a pipe that goes through it to evacuate stormwater. So, hey, let's take a $3,000 check valve, toss it in there, and life is good. That was the advertisement, and I'm not the only public works director, stormwater engineer, or professional that bought that story. And it comes to find out we have these two issues that make the tide check valve unreliable. And so when you go back to the thinking about it, how do you make the tide check valve reliable? What other engineering principles do we have in play here that we can apply to these locations to increase our reliability and protect ourselves against flooding? And so, as I said before, we have the marine growth, which is a daylight and salinity food source issue, and we have the the debris issue. And so we broke those apart, and then we have the maintenance issue. And so we took all three of those ideas or aspects of it and said, okay, what are we going to do? How can we do this using our principles of design and physics and engineering and marine biology and everything else we can think of? How do we do this? And so this project is going to design and go through that thought process, incorporate all of those principles, incorporate all those professional fields of engineering and design, and come up with a solution.
And just to further, again, just to clarify what this will do and what the purpose of this is, because not just in the Don Cesar neighborhood, but in many of the other neighborhoods, we have two different types of flooding issues, right? We have high water, and then we have just a lot of rain coming down. This will address which of those two flooding issues?
Both.
Okay. How so?
If it worked perfectly now, and the situation with marine growth and debris were not present, then the tide check valve against a rising tide would close. And if it rained, then the rain would stack up behind the valve in the street, but I'd rather drive through fresh water than salt water. When the tide goes down, the head pressure of the water on the street would then push through the valve and evacuate. That's the perfect storm. We're going to do exactly that, but we're going to do it farther back in the street behind these protective measures.
And just so that, because this was something that I, personally, I don't mind saying, I did not understand. But when there is standing water on the road and there's a high tide, it is designed to keep the rainwater on the road and keep the seawater, the salt water, off the road. So it's designed to actually hold the rainwater, the fresh water, until such time that the tide goes down and then the water on the street can evacuate into the bay.
That is correct. It takes about 8 inches of differential head pressure to push the storm water through the valve.
Right. So it's working the way it's designed at that time.
That's correct. Before the marine growth took on it, before the debris got into there, they worked as they were advertised.
Okay.
And this is deja vu for me, but and I'm happy to hear the mayor bring this up and that recognizes it, because we can go back to when we originally designed the spillways or outfalls. I don't want to call them ski ramps. And that question came up back then, I know for myself, as to whether we would have barnacle growth. And at that time, I was told that it was going to be far enough back in that it would prevent barnacle growth. Now, you know I'm trying to get a solution, okay? And I'm not wanting to try something, but if I feel like we tried something and it didn't work, even though we knew before the design that it was a possibility that we could have growth. But we were told that wasn't going to happen. It was far back enough for it not to happen. Then, during the construction of all these outfalls, I already knew we were going to have more than just fresh water, but also salt water, because the seawalls were not being addressed, not only on private property, but on city property, because not all the outfalls are built on the whole stretch of city-owned property. And I know this might throw some of you off because you might not know the design, but I know Mike is aware of this because God knows I had countless emails on this. The one on Don Jose, if any of you have driven around through there, would see that it's much wider than the rest of them, because that's the only one that was built from property line to property line of city spillway. The one on Alfonso, the one on Alhambra, was not. Okay, so water comes around the sides of those spillways. So the mayor would be clear to understand, we don't know if it's fresh water or if it's salt water, because the same comment you just mentioned earlier, Mike, saying, I prefer to drive through fresh water, I was told before the same comment. Do I prefer to drive through fresh water? I prefer to drive through no water. Fresh water could be bad too. The intersection closest to where I live is very deep on fresh water because of the slope and the pitch of the street. So depending where you live, you could have more water, and Mike, you should be aware of this, on 36, you got water backing up all the way past Casablanca, not just East Maritana. That's fresh water. You should, it's not going to prevent an issue, okay, for people trying to get out of their home, ingress or egress, or safety, whatever it may be. I like that it is further back, the baffle box. Again, didn't have enough time to really look into this whole thing. I think Mike has mentioned this a couple of times about this potential design. I know at the community meeting you kind of went over it through the surface, but I haven't had time to even discuss it or understand it. Do I hope it will fix it? Yes. But can we 100% for certain know this engineering is going to fix it? I think it's a question mark, because it didn't fix it before. The project ended March of last year, to be exact. And my other question is, I think the company had to retrofit, I think is the word, the flex valves that weren't working on Alfonso, Alhambra, and I think there was one more. I'm not sure if it was a 3102. Was that done already by that company? Did they already come back out and fix the ones that weren't correct?
Tide check valves in 2 locations were replaced by the manufacturer.
And are
under
those
warranty.
currently working 100%?
It's anybody's debate on any particular tidal rise as to whether or not they're working.
So we're not sure.
The observations of everybody we've heard is that we have water behind the valves on a routine basis. Now, whether it's coming through the valve or around the adjacent outfalls or up the boat ramp, I'm not going to argue that the water is there. I'm looking to offer what I believe is a advanced engineering concept that I believe has merit. If we would choose to try to do something else, I'm perfectly happy to entertain any of those types of comments also.
Is it, I don't want to say safe, but is it good to say, it's almost like we're testing something, right? We build this, test it out in these locations before even attempting to do it elsewhere, right? Before Bella Vista does flood, for residents who said they don't, and he's okay. Well, I've got a lot of residents from Bella Vista, Boca Ciega, who call and complain. So everybody's complaining. I don't think everyone's okay with it. But it's a big investment. We did invest a lot before. This is a 57, if I remember the number, for the design. We don't know what the cost yet will be to do it. So it'll take some time to be able to replicate this, right? Before we say, this is working, let's invest this in Paso Grill, let's invest this in Boca Ciega, let's invest it in, District 1 through 4, right? It could take time and then not really know.
I'm not going to offer you any guarantees. Nothing is perfect. We are advancing engineering principles and knowledge in ways that they didn't teach me in college. And as I talk to all of my colleagues, we are all cities led by public works directors for their engineering. We are all collaborating and thinking about the same thing. So when the tide check valves came in, we all said, yeah, this concept has been around for 100 years. Let's give it a shot on this particular situation that is new. And we all learned the same thing together. And so I have shared my thoughts with the county public works director team, and everybody's kind of waiting and taking a look at what we're designing, what we're doing. I've been asked for my tide chuck valve vault concept by a number of other agencies, to include the FDOT. So we are applying engineering principles to challenges that we didn't foresee as much as 10, 15 years ago. But they're here now. And they are stark in our face here now. And so we can choose to continue to try to do our best and rely on engineering principles and thought and intuitiveness and give it a shot. Or we can sit back and say, well, I don't think that's going to work, and we'll do something different. The choice is entirely y'all's.
And Mike, with the pump station, is that going to work in conjunction with this? So would the pump station be pumping the stormwater out?
Pump stations will be stormwater pump stations.
So there wouldn't be fresh water then either, right? Because you would pump out stormwater.
Yeah, the pump stations will be designed to trigger at a certain depth on the street itself. So probably we'll have to figure out what the design criteria for the pumps will be. Water in the gutter, a certain volume of water. All those calculations come into play. And so, but that's still a long way off. We are
approving
years.
the pump station though at the same time, right? The
concept design is only to make sure that it fits in the space.
Not the design of the pump itself?
No. We're going to take a box that represents a reasonable sized pump, and we're going to make sure that that box fits and orients itself into the space with the other devices and all the other utilities that happen to be there.
And Mike, I think that's why we're only doing the 30% on that at this point.
That is correct.
If I could add one other, Mayor, if you don't mind, if I could add on this particular item on the 5 locations, I've always liked our staff being innovative and being the leader in finding solutions. But as we all know, the solution that everyone thought was a good one with what, the check valves does not work. And, from what I've seen of this solution, it certainly would address those problems. I guess my question, or maybe the discussion we should have, the pros and cons maybe of only doing one of those locations now instead of all 5. I know the downside would be we would be putting off the other 4 for a while and getting those done. But I guess the side of it would be we would be testing a location out to find out if it really works the way we thought it would work. So that may be a discussion we should have. And Mike, if you have further ideas on that, and I know the cost would probably go up by separating them also, but that might be a discussion we should have.
We can certainly do one location as a advanced test, and we will go through 5 or 6 months of design. We might be able to speed the procurement up by using an existing contractor that we have and be in construction, which are funds that are not appropriated yet. I don't have CFP funds for these. But construction could take place prior to the 25 hurricane season if we just do one. And then we ride that hurricane season out and see how it works. And so basically, you take your one location, you sacrifice off all of the others, and it's not just these other 4. There's 2 in Bella Vista, there's 6 in Paso Grill, and there are 3 others in the Don Cesar neighborhood. So all of those locations will remain open for another 2 years instead of we give it a shot. And even if it doesn't work perfectly, once the structure's there, it gives us a whole lot more information physically and from observation as to is it working as designed, or if it's not working as designed, it will show us why not. So the lessons learned off of that will be far less costly if we go all in than we will be if we piecemeal it in terms of the potential for future flooding and damage.
Just to clarify, the 57K, and it's for design, that doesn't include construction?
This is design.
Strictly design, so it doesn't include fabricating the part, trenching it out, putting it in? Okay, so this is just to design it? Okay.
For the 5 locations.
Yeah, which should be the same for all of them, right?
It should be, yeah.
They'll be very, very similar. So the topography is a little bit different, so you have to survey. The utilities existing will have to be identified, and you have to work around those. I mean, each intersection has a little bit of uniqueness to it, but the concept is the same for all of them.
But just to make sure I understand, this includes in that design, this is what the unit would look like with the eyelets and all that type of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that piece of the design is already done separately.
And Commissioner, maybe I wasn't clear, the design, would be for all 5, but you could make that decision then once the design's done, do you want to do all 5 of them now or do you want to do one? But that'll be a future decision.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, Mike would stand up here and say, do this, and I guarantee you that this will fix your problem, but I think we heard that the first time, right? Well, I know you didn't say I guarantee it. But I think as I see it now, our option is to try something, right? Give it our best shot based on the data and the information and engineering we have, or do nothing. I don't think doing nothing is an option at all. And so I would, I'm more inclined to, let's look at a design. Let's, I don't even like the idea of putting it in one location, because then that puts us in 2026 before we can even look at the other locations. But at the same time, I don't know what the number's going to be, but it's going to be a big number. And I also don't think that we should spend all that money on 5 locations and maybe it doesn't work. Maybe we'll find something. If we do one location, maybe we find a different problem. Maybe we'll have to redesign and re-engineer that location. We don't know. I think we're just making a decision based on the best data that we have today. But as you mentioned, 10, 15 years ago, you didn't have today's data.
As near as I can tell from around the region, we stand here today on the cutting edge of ideas.
And I know you mentioned that before, that the county has approached you, that, Florida has approached you. Maybe, I'm sure you've probably spoken to other city public works directors. Has anyone said, hey, we'll go in with you to try this? Right, has anyone, Florida or the county?
Everybody's having a hard enough time protecting their turf.
Yeah. So, I'm sure let's say that we design this and it works like magic, and then everybody else comes, Mike, can we have you design?
There is a question before the attorney on the issue of patents, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Me, I'm willing to hand this thing out if it's going to help people.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think it'd be nice if on the front end, especially the county, said, look, here's something that we can work with St. Pete Beach. Maybe that's a phone call we can make and say, look, it's $50,000. If you can pitch in half of that, and then part of our contribution will be, look, when we will be the guinea pig, we'll do this one, and then if it works, we'll share it with all the other cities and municipalities in Pinellas County.
We can certainly do that, yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
But again, this is just for design.
It is.
No shovels in the dirt, nothing.
Yeah. And then again, I think it's the county takes a fair amount of tourist development tax out of St. Pete Beach. I don't know, 15, 17 million every year. So if we ask for $27,000, I don't think that's a...
This could be a resiliency fundraiser.
Could be. All right, do we have any audience comments?
Kathy Garshaw.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Kathy Garshaw, Dances Our Place. So there was just a couple of quick things. First of all, I'm super excited to see action moving forward is always great. Getting some new designs awesome. Redo, not good, obviously. Don't need to restate that. Two things. One, Mike, you mentioned, it sounds like, I don't know if I said that the right way, there's an update to this. So I would request that if we have an update, I can't find it anywhere, and it would be important, I think, to share that with the community and maybe even do a community town hall, because I think you can see we're all pretty excited about this, whether you're in Bella Vista, Don Cesar, Paso Grill. We all want to know what's going on in the space. The other thing is, you know, we look at the boat ramp, or we look at the idea of these outfalls. It's great, but I think placing it over an overall plan and knowing that this all feeds together to serve an overall strategy, I think that's what would be really helpful, so that as you place your bets, like for example, doing 57, I don't know what the number is, I did not read that level of detail, but if it's $57,000 to do 5, why, if we have 9 plus we have 2 for FDOT and something else, why not do it all? I mean, get the economies of scale, because we don't just want 5, we need 9. So I guess that would be the thing. Let's if we're going to move forward, let's go ahead and make the bet that this is the study now, and let's get a design to support the study, and then we could work on funding models with you all, with assessments, with grants, and with government bonds to help us pay for this over the next couple of years, instead of being here again, looking at a revised plan, because it will always get better. There'll always be another way to do this better. Just give it time. So that's my other ask, is just to get this against a bigger plan and share that plan. The last thing is, it's just a question of maintenance. And I know this is probably not a very fun topic, but we did place our bets on what we have. Maybe maintenance, I think we heard Mike talk, there's not staffing. Wayne, I don't know what the situation is, but if we could maintain what we have right now to get us by, I would just beg you to do that. So what's the cost to maintain what we have? Because even if we're in design, this is years out. So what can we do to just maintain what we have, get the barnacles and debris out, make a commitment to that for the next 6 months, help the infrastructure we have work better? Thank you.
Thank you.
Cameron?
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Cameron Mazzucci, West Maritana Drive. I'm just curious, I hear a lot of things that sound very complex, and honestly, in my opinion, it sounds like it's something too complex for just a city worker to be handling on his own. And I don't think that the city of St. Pete Beach is going to produce something that's going to save the rest of the country or the world by their design. I think that's very overarching, and I'm wondering why we're not hiring tried and true engineering firms and construction companies to come up with a plan that will work and they will be responsible for if it fails. In the public sector, if you work for a company and you produce failures and cost the company money, you lose your job. But it seems like there's not a lot of accountability when failures occur here. So if we hire out, we hold them responsible. We have them fix the problem that they created. Because right now it seems like we create a problem and then we get to go and have a second or third or fourth attempt at it. And absolutely, if we were to follow that path, I would definitely not suggest doing them all at the same time. Because if you have the same problem, we've just multiplied by 5 and the cost of it. The other statement, I don't know if I can ask a question or not, but it's in regards to this seawall, this non-permanent seawall that's going to be put up.
That's the next agenda item.
What's the purpose of it?
That's the next agenda item we'll be discussing.
Okay. The reason I bring it up is because we're talking about spending money to put up something temporary. For what? Because I know our neighborhood could use a temporary seawall. So why is it okay to spend the money to put up a temporary seawall there and not in our neighborhood? And if you say it's because you own the seawall, I don't understand that logic. Because the seawall's going up to protect the land, not the seawall. And we need that protection too. I would ask, and I would be willing to help in any way I can as a resident, but we do need a plan to get these seawalls up in our neighborhood. And I don't think we should be fighting and having the standoff of who's going to pay for it. I think it should be a collaboration. But I know a lot of residents that live on the water that are willing to put up the money. But there's no plan, and we have to do it all at the same time. So it's really going to take us working together. And I'm willing to be part of it if I need to be, but we need to get more communication between all the people who have seawalls and with the city and how we can move forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jerry?
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Jerry Icangelo, 2702 Passive Way. I want to piggyback off a comment made 2 presenters ago, having to do with, again, these tidal check valves. I'm not willing to want to wait a year or two to find out whether or not the next iteration of a solution is going to be applicable to the valves that are along Passive Way. So the piggyback comment has to do with, is there anything that can be done now to make these valves working again? I mean, if they're failed, fix them or replace them. I heard Mike mention that these recent spillways, they lasted maybe 2 years, was replaced by the manufacturer. So I would like clarification as to whether or not the valves installed at Pasquarel Way are not accessible at all. So therefore, there cannot be any type of temporary remediation. Again, to me, I would find that very hard to believe. But if we're going to go along this path of another iteration, do it once, see how that goes before applying it to our stretch of Pasquarel Way, that just puts more of the problem of flooding and water incursion and property damage upon us until there's something done. So that's all I want clarification is, can anything be done now to either service or replace the valves? And then if this other concept valve works, then do it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Kurzman?
No slides. John Kurzman, Be Beyond Way. I just want to provide some information that I've mentioned before, and that is that people have told me that they're having flooding where they didn't used to have flooding. And I went back and I looked at the NOAA records and the records of actual water levels. And we have people reporting flooding on 59th Avenue, as well as Bella Vista. But they're reporting, both of those people mentioned to me that they're seeing flooding at higher levels, penetrating their houses, doing things. And when I go back, the water level was not as high as it had been in prior times when they didn't have problems. So at first, one idea was, well, it's because they have the check valves and the check valves weren't working. But I heard tonight the check valves have only been around for maybe 2 years, or at least that model. So I'm just throwing out there, what else changed? You can't blame global warming because the water is lower than it was. The issue is we're getting more flooded for the same level of water. And I think we just need to figure out why that is. And maybe Mike knows the answer and he can share it. But what fundamentally has changed, not to the environment, but that we actually have worse situation for the same level of water? That's my question. I think we have to figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Commissioners, any further comments or questions for Mike?
I do want to just because some of the residents brought it up, and I don't know if you all want to talk about it, but the company responsibilities, like I know Cameron mentioned, and it popped up as a question in my mind about the prior, they came back and refitted those flex valves, the ones that were no good, right? That wasn't fitted right, whatever it may be. Is there a level of responsibility on those contracts for them to repair or do something different, because it's not what we thought. You know, I mentioned earlier when we were all talking, this is deja vu for me, because we thought the design of where those flex valves were was okay as far as growth, because it does tie back to what a lot of the residents are saying about why is the ones that we have right now failing, and we know it's maintenance. We don't have the equipment to maintain them, or the staff, if you want to say it's the staff, but I think there was an issue of equipment to clean some of these out, or how frequently do they do this? What is the schedule of, especially with storms coming, what is the schedule of maintenance for the current ones that we have, even for like the Don Cesar area or Paso Grill, who actually did have theirs done way before ours? How frequently do they go and clean them out? I could not imagine that it was designed that you could not access it. It just kind of, you know, but it baffles me, right? That we can't access and clean and maintain, whether it's ours or the ones that DOT own. I know another resident who lives off of the Bayway, we have issues with those flex valves, and if any of you are familiar, Barcelona, Granada, all of them are flooding because there's either garbage lodged in there, and the frequency of coming out and cleaning it out is infrequent. So that's just a question maybe, you know, city manager Mike or someone can address why that's happening. I think we also mentioned seawall plan. I just wanted to throw this out because it triggered a memory, and I don't think I mentioned this at a commission meeting, but last year, and Amber, you might be able to help me because I know you helped me. There was a motion by the prior commission back in June, I think it was, of 2023, for a plan on the seawalls of Don Cesar. Where are we on that?
Well, Mike, you can help me, but I think what I've been told as far as maintenance, it's not a matter of not enough people or equipment. It's a matter of being able to maintain them the way they're designed. Mike, you may want to add to that, but it's not a staffing or equipment. It's just the ability, the way those are designed and installed to actually do the maintenance. And that's why, you know, they're looking at a different design that would address that maintenance issue. One of the things that they're addressing, you know, as far as whether, you know, the engineering firm is responsible, I think that was your first question. You know, there's certain assumptions that are always made in designs, and, you know, I heard the discussion, you know, I wasn't here, but I heard the discussion that they talked about, well, everybody thought that where they're located, the marine growth would not, obviously that's an assumption that was wrong, you know. If there's a mechanical problem then that's obviously the problem that the manufacturer has to address, and they did address on a couple of them, I believe. So I don't know, Mike, if you have anything else to add, I believe that answers your question.
And as far as the motion for the seawall, do we know whatever happened with that?
I do not know anything about that one.
I would just like someone to follow up on it.
Sure.
All right, do we have a motion?
And again, this is for the design. We can revisit later how many. Okay. I'll move to approve item 4C, outfall rehabilitation locations, Don Cesar neighborhood.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Lorenzen?
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have item 4D, temporary seawall at 36th Avenue.
The seawall that the city owns at the terminus of 36th Avenue is a little unique. It's 50 foot wide right of way, and it's about 2.6 feet cap elevation. It has a Department of Transportation stormwater pipe that runs through it underneath the road, and then we have our surface rainwater evacuation running through a pipe on the surface. The structure is fractured quite significantly and has gotten worse over the last couple of years. So the source of flooding in that neighborhood is through the holes in that seawall, nothing else. There are tide check valves. There's one on the surface, and it appears to be functioning well. And there is one in the FDOT line that also appears to be functioning well. But the flooding in that neighborhood, every high tide, is coming through the fractures of the concrete wall. The solution to this particular location is more complex than most, partially because of the different types of pipes going through there, but also because of how the rainwater will flow in a future design. And so in designing this particular solution, rainwater will be going into new inlets that will be constructed, flowing backwards up the street through the baffle box that's already existing, and then through a new check valve, and then back through the wall, where all of the others continue to flow through that wall or at an inlet in close proximity. So there's road elevations and things that are going to be incorporated into this project by necessity to have the stormwater actually flowing in the right direction. The attempt at doing a really nice living shoreline was thwarted by the Florida Administrative Code. We cannot go out into the water with our water quality thoughts nearly as far as we wanted to. So recognizing that we were not going to win in an argument against the state of Florida anytime soon, we modified that design to cut that distance back severely, and we went to a different permitting process, which is much quicker, much faster, but still takes time. And that's where we're at with the bigger project at this point. Well, we're not going to get into construction anytime soon. The procurement process itself with bidding and everything, we're not going to get into construction this hurricane season, but we're going to go through this hurricane season. And this particular location lends itself to a temporary fix. The plan is to excavate out 1 bucket width wide, a half-a-yard bucket, in front of the existing wall, form it up, and put flowable concrete fill into that space. It will flow into the voids in the wall, and it will form a bond against the existing concrete, against the soils behind it, and it will halt the flooding coming through that seawall, and it will hold that neighborhood dry in all cases except an overtopping in the future. That's what this project is designed to get this neighborhood through this hurricane season for this amount of money.
Is that like injections? You know, I forgot the name of the company.
Similar.
So it's similar to injunctions. And I bring this up only because, you know, with the fails that we have waiting for the living shoreline, the other side of on Maritana, we did have a company who came out, forgot the name of the company, starts with an H, I'm stuck on it, that does injections. They call it injections when they come out. But because of the severity of the seawall, they did not recommend it. And hearing you say it's cracked, I'm assuming it's just as severe as the ones that are along South Maritana.
I think the ones along South Maritana are a little bit more advanced in their deterioration than this particular one. I've looked at it with the contractor and with our construction inspector, with an engineer, and our conclusion is that the flowable fill, correctly mixed, will hold and plug those voids, and we will have a tight bond and a tight seal.
And my other question is, or I might have a couple more, why not just make a seawall? Why do we need a temporary one? Why go in the living, we have an issue with the living shoreline design. I know we're going for a second attempt, redesigning it, making it a little bit different. But why not make a permanent seawall? And if we could add a living shoreline component to it, add it later. and not spend the money on a temporary and get a company out and make a permanent seawall at the 5 nav, like the ordinance requires.
The company that we have can do this work under an existing contract and can start in a couple of weeks. For me to go out and procure for a new seawall, we won't be in construction until the end of the hurricane season. This is all about timing. And I would still have to take that wall out because it doesn't solve the drainage problems. The design is much more complex than just tossing a wall across the space.
I've got a question. Has the city used this type of temporary seawall design anywhere else in the past?
Not to my knowledge.
What happens if we do nothing?
The neighborhood will continue to flood on a weekly basis.
So in simple terms, it's a Band-Aid fix for hurricane season.
This pushes us through until the end of the hurricane season, yes. And during that time, we will advance the design, get our permit, go ahead through procurement actions, go ahead and get a contractor on board. And after the hurricane season, maybe around the December, January timeframe, move into construction.
Mike, obviously you've had flooding in that neighborhood. What happens on those events where it comes over all the seawalls anyway? Let me rephrase that. So this would keep normal rain events or normal tides from going through the cracks. But on those bad days where it goes over the top of the seawalls, does it on occasion go all the way up to the homes?
The number of times that it's come over top of the seawall is limited to the bigger events, the Idalia, the Hermine, those types of events, maybe 3 in the last 8 years or so. So if it's overtopping the seawall cap, then it's game over. The water will seek its elevation.
Yeah.
This is the daily, the weekly, the high tide, the king tide, the heavy rains. This is the tidal effects that the neighborhood is experiencing.
But it doesn't affect the homes for those tidal events, just the cars being able to drive through them?
It gets up pretty good. It gets 18 to 20 inches in the intersection. And so cars have stalled out, the wake goes up into people's garages. It's killing all the grass and the shrubbery. It's the same situation that we have in other neighborhoods. In this particular neighborhood, we have this particular solution because of this particular circumstance that solves this problem temporarily for the entire neighborhood. We don't have that circumstance anyplace else that I'm aware of.
So Mike, on the city-owned seawalls, I'm guessing you have a list in order of most needing to be replaced.
We do.
And is this one on like the list of next needs to be replaced anyway?
It is.
And then this is also the Band-Aid for this storm season, or till we can get a new seawall in that spot, because it's not just storms, right? It's
correct.
Any old high tide. Okay.
Wayne, can you tell me what the, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What's the time for procurement, just so that we know, if we say, no, we want a permanent seawall instead, what's the time frame, actual time frame if we say urgently we want this forward?
At least 90 days.
Start procurement.
After we get permits.
After you get a design,
after
right?
we get permits. I'm talking about if we're ready to try to find someone to build a seawall, we put it out, advertise it at least for 30 days, sometimes longer, so we can get several contractors. Then the bids have to be reviewed, then they have to be brought to you, then they have to be approved, and then the contractor has to get it on their schedule. So, from the time you actually put a job out on the street to you see shovels moving, you're 6 months or more. But the other part, as Mike said, you've got to get the permitting done in there before we can actually award a bid also.
And is the permit from the city? Because it's just a seawall. We're not talking about living shoreline going out further.
Mike, can you address the permitting process?
State FDEP process.
So every seawall in the city goes through FDE process.
We have to permit as a city through the state, yes, on every one of them.
So every homeowner takes about 6 months to get their seawall up if they request one, is what we're saying.
Well, a homeowner doesn't have to go through the procurement process that we go through.
But that's 90 days to get it going, right? So, but I mean, at the moment of permitting, it takes that much longer for, and again, I'm just trying to, I would rather get something permanent than temporary, obviously, but, you know, it is not the only intersection flooding in our neighborhood. And I know I see my 36 people here, so it's not that I don't want it addressed, but I want it fixed, you know, not just Band-Aid. Because I'm sure Mike can give me 100% guarantee that this is going to Band-Aid it temporarily.
Yeah, this is a Band-Aid that we think will help the situation until we can get a permanent structure built.
I think I know where you're going. So this is almost mid-June. So if we said yes right now, what would be your estimate before shovels would start digging in walls? Which, I mean, for a real one, not the temporary one. Actually, for the temporary one, too.
For the temporary one, from time of go, 2 weeks, and then 1 week to finish.
So no permit? Okay. I didn't know that.
I don't believe we even need a city permit for this one, Wayne.
I don't think so.
No.
City Clerk, do we have any audience comments? Okay. Any further questions for Mike?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the construction of a temporary seawall at 36 Ave by Roland Inc. in the amount of $36,457.50.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Philps?
Yes.
Commissioner Woznicki?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mayor Petrella?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
since I'm the oldest guy sitting here at the dais, can we have like a 5-minute break?
Are you though?
I think so.
I'm right there with you.
All right. Let's call it 8:50 when we return. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You see that?
Nobody got it. Nobody's in agreement.
Okay.
They put a stay on that.
All right, next we have ordinances. 5A, final reading and public hearing, ordinance 2024-01, technical review committee attendance. City Clerk?
Sure, thank you. An ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, Boards, Committees, Commissions, Article 6, Technical Review Committee, parent TRC, Section 22-146, Membership, providing for codification, conflicts, severability, correction of scrivener's error, construction, publication, and an effective date.
Thank you. City Attorney?
Okay, this is a ordinance, final reading of it. It's very simple. It basically adds to the TRC the membership being city attorney, city clerk. So it's in chapter 22 where you have your boards and committees. So I think the reason for that is that, you know, these committees have become more important. So I think formalizing them a little bit. We've been attending them. My staff has been attending them via Zoom. You know, some of the issues discussed are very, very minor, and but some of them are not. And I think it's important that the minutes and everything are taken and notices are done correctly, and that's what the clerk does. And you know, if myself or someone from my firm, one of the attorneys, needs to jump in, because there are frequently attorneys at these meetings that staff may need some assistance with.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I
Do we have any?
Yeah. Deborah Scheckner?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Deborah Scheckner, Bocasega Isle Drive. I did notice a while back at one of the meetings that was recorded, part of it was left out. So I don't know if that was a glitch or what, but I would like to see a backup, maybe just voice recording during these meetings. And to me, there were other people there. It was a very significant piece of information that was left out of one of the meetings during a recording. And so I want to know that maybe there's backup, maybe there's something else, so that we make sure that everything is recorded properly. And I think it's important, even for everybody up there, to watch those meetings. So I don't know if we can watch them if they're recorded the next day, or how you're going to do that. It's going to be the same as watching a board meeting or a commission meeting, that it is on the city website. And I really, really think that's important to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was something that we addressed last year, where we specifically requested that they would be recorded and broadcast. So I have noticed, I'm not sure which specific meeting Mrs. Scheckner is speaking about, but I have noticed on several other meetings and recordings where there seem to be glitches on a regular basis, where certain sections are missing, and sometimes on the the city's YouTube channel, the recording has a section that is missing on the city's website recording, or vice versa. And so that'd be something would be greatly if you could looked into.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, I've seen it about 3 or 4 different times recently.
I'm sorry, do you see it for all other meetings or TRC specifically?
City commission meetings,
Okay.
planning board meetings. Yeah, I've seen it on, and it happens regularly where a 5-minute chunk is missing from somewhere. So. Go ahead. I'm not sure why you're walking away. If you please state your name and address for the record.
Dana Richardson, 5830 Bahama Way South. I just want to say I've noticed that you used to put on the website the district meetings, and I think the last one was 2022. The District 3 meeting got put on, but any of the other ones like that we had for District 2 were not, or District 1. So if you could please make sure those get recorded and added, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make a comment on that. The District 2 Town Hall is on the city website. If you go to my profile on the city website, it's under there.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item 5A?
I move to adopt ordinance 2024-01.
Second?
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lorenzen?
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Mayor Petrella?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next we have items for discussion. 5A, Florida League of Cities Government Week activity. City Clerk, I believe that's you.
Excuse me, Mayor, before you do that, because I was just following through the agenda. That page 213, is that the addendum to wastewater system repairs? Is that like just something that is in our packet that's not supposed to be there? Just I want to make sure that I'm attaching things to where on my computer. I don't know if you all noticed from page 213 to 246.
Yeah.
There's an addendum 1 wastewater systems repair issued September 7, 2021, and it goes on, and I believe it's not tied to anything that's in our agenda, so I just, I don't know if a correction needs to be made or just note it that that was just something that maybe was put there by mistake or error. You don't know?
What page number?
It starts on page 213.
We let Mike escape too early.
Well, I know it's rolling company. It has nothing that we've approved, prior, so, and I know it doesn't have anything to do with the odor control device that we approved on the consent agenda. I was just waiting to see if something was going to come up before you went on to the next section.
That would have been before section 5.
Yeah, I didn't.
Maybe that's something
With
the city
temporary
clerk
seawall.
can take a look
It's the
at.
same company.
Part of it was included, I'm sorry, Commissioner, Mayor, it was included in the temporary seawall, item D. And when I was publishing this, I did notice it, but I don't know Public Works' stuff, so I just assumed it went with it. But I did notice it, and I questioned before I pushed it out, but I was at my due time.
I don't know if does it matter?
It might have just been in there by mistake.
Okay, then I'll say it was by mistake and it's noted.
It's the same company.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the seawall.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
City Clerk, 6A.
So yes, I provided you all last week or last meeting with a couple copies, or a couple pages from what the Florida League of Cities sent me regarding Florida City Government Week. And prior to this year, other years, I was never emailed anything or mailed anything like this, and it was pretty much last minute. So I was actually pretty excited to have this so that we could kind of come together ahead of time and figure something out. And the couple of things that I gave you guys, like we talked about last time, was doing the youth for the school and like asking for an essay maybe from 5th graders. Maybe what would you do if you were commissioner for a day or mayor for a day, and having them write a little essay about that and having them come to a commission meeting. You all can review them. And then the other one was a bingo with different businesses, and that was pretty low cost when the city of Longwood did it. They did it for about $160. So I thought one of those two options for us. I just wanted your feedback on what you'd like me to do, if anything.
I thought the bingo idea was a cool idea.
I like both of them.
Yeah, I like the school thing
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
You just want me to pick one?
I know it's
Do
too
both.
much to say both, but can you?
Yeah. Or at least see if the school is interested in participating in something like the essay contest, Yeah.
I can work on that and give you guys a report back. Thank you.
Sounds good. Next, we have item 6B, beach ordinance.
Yeah, I had asked for that to be put on the agenda, and I know we just spent a lot of time talking about that last week, but as I often do, I walked out of that meeting feeling like I did not express myself well. So I wanted a second shot at it. At the end of the meeting with the Beach Stewardship Committee, I had questioned like pulling some sections of that beach ordinance apart. And I think that my reason for that got lost a little bit in that discussion. And that's why I wanted to bring it back up, is just that in looking at that beach ordinance, it's a big document that covers a lot of things. And so my goal is, you know, that the commission and we and previous commissions and the Beach Stewardship Committee have been talking about this a lot over a lot of years. And I was thinking, man, how great would it be if we could get some portion of that to actually happen, you know, potentially even before, you know, the Labor Day holiday weekend or something like that, or to get some things happening a little bit sooner. And so my thought was, and that also when it comes to the first and second readings of the ordinance, that I feel like there's most of the ordinance, which I'm sure plenty of people will have a lot of things to say about, and then there's the part of the ordinance involving the chairs behind the hotels, which I also think a lot of people will have a lot of things to say about. And so in the interest of allowing kind of multiple public comment times or public comment on a couple of different big issues, and in interest of being able to perhaps get us through to the point where we could have a little bit more control or at least knowledge about businesses that are operating on the beach through the licensing portion of the ordinance, and some of those kinds of things, if we didn't want to consider pulling the discussion about the chairs and the setbacks. And I think another reason I was thinking of pulling that section out is just the time that it might take. And I don't know if, Jennifer, are you still here? If you have any input for us on, like, realistically, how long it's gonna take to get the information back that we were asking for when we start talking about setbacks and, you know, property lines and, you know, all of the stuff that's involved in that.
It's twofold, because part of that is the business impact letter that we also have to prepare. So I think when we talked about it, we were looking down the road 90+ days to get all of that stuff together. I think Matthew and I are comfortable with everything else but that part of it. I know there is I think Lisa left, but there is a beach stewardship next week, Amber? To discuss the turtle lighting and the turtle issues as a separate thing, as we separated that out. I think everything else outside of the cabanas, I think we're pretty clear from you all and from the Beach Stewardship Committee of being able to prepare that and present that pretty quickly if we take that section out. And that allows us just to work on that section, which then might speed it up a little bit. So I think we're comfortable with that. I don't want to say John Kurzman was right by taking things not in one whole, so I'll be on record. But I think Matthew and I are both comfortable with that. If you are, that we can come to you sooner, like she said, and probably get a first, second read, hopefully before Labor Day, with a majority of what was in there, other than the cabanas and these turtle environmental things.
So, thank you. So I didn't know if anyone had any feelings about that one way or another, or if like we had talked about last week, everybody would rather just keep it all together, even if it takes, you know, even if it's, you know, October, November, December before we can get the whole thing sorted out.
And I agree with Commissioner Marriott that, because I always saw that as more administrative part of the ordinance, kind of like, you know, we have our waterway and we're trying to figure out how we get, what's the permitting going to be for commercial entities to use the boat ramp, you know, since that was up out here. That I see that more administrative. I don't know, I mean, it could be added later if we wanted to be part of the ordinance, but that was such an administrative piece that you could still approve the beach ordinance while they work on the administrative piece of setbacks and density and so forth, because there is a lot of differences between all the different hotels and condominiums, you know, and also private properties, homes and so forth. So I would agree.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, seems reasonable to me.
It's all right, we don't have public comments in this section, so.
I thought this was the John
Did you bring your 6 people with you? Because you already had 12 minutes tonight. Yeah. I know we had discussed this at the beach stewardship workshop. We're so close to the end of getting this done. If we break this up into multiple sections, we're going to have to do 2 different impact studies. We're going to have to do multiple readings over and over again. I mean, we're basically at the finish line. Part of me says, you know, we've already been advised that there are groups getting together ready to basically file lawsuits against the city the moment that we even touch the beach ordinance. I can tell you I have spoken to businesses who are part of the chamber who are saying the chamber's organizing those meetings, right? And to me, this sounds like specifically singling out a group and letting them off the hook and just kicking the can further down. And when you look at where is the biggest impact on the beach, it's not from residents. It's from the chairs, from the cabanas, it is from the hotel, it is from the visitors. And by leaving this out of the whole big picture, we're again not addressing the issue that is causing all of the problems that we have, whether it's overcrowding, whether it's alcohol on the beach, whether it's pollution, whether it's the sea turtles, the skimmers, the trash on the beach. And I think we're not doing our residents a service. With 3 years, we've been working on this beach ordinance. And we are this close from the finish line. And again, we're specifically singling out the one section and leaving that out that will have the greatest impact, and actually having a nicer beach, a more user-friendly beach, a more safe beach, something that we can be proud of, a cleaner beach, something more environmentally conscious, addressing the issues that we have with the environmental impact, especially on endangered species. So I, for one, I think we're letting people off the hook by not addressing the issues that need to be addressed. And we do a lot of talking, and we talk for 3 years, and it's time for action, and we're this close from having the information we need so we can move forward.
I appreciate your view on that. My goal is not at all to let anyone off the hook. It's to get the portion that we can get done quickly, and it's not to not keep working on the other part and get it done in the same time frame it would get done anyway. It's to get the other part done more quickly. And perhaps I feel that way because on the section of beach that's closest to me, which is north of the Postcard Inn, what I see when I walk over there is people who have 4 10-by-10 tents tied together on the beach. And that's part of what the beach ordinance would address. What I see is 7 different companies that are doing professional bikini photo shoots on the beach and on the rocks at sunset that's keeping residents and anybody else from being able to even get to the beach and see the sunset and get to the water because there's, you know, a pop-up changing room and 7 different cameramen and lights. And what I see is an elaborate wedding or proposal set up in front of the secret garden that where after dark they flip on LED lights that are very bright so they can have this perfect photo shoot scenario for this thing that's happening. And this would give us the chance to get a handle on some of those things before summer is over. It's not at all to let anybody off the hook or to say that we're not going to follow through with the rest of these things. It's that we could get this one chunk done probably by Labor Day and to control some of the density and intensity on the beach more quickly rather than leaving all of it until, and maybe it would just be November, you know, and we would have it all done. And so certainly if everybody felt like that was the right call, we could absolutely do that. But I just wanted to be real clear that my goal had nothing to do with letting anyone off the hook or removing a section from what we're doing. It's just separating them out so that we can do the section that's very immediately achievable and could make an immediate difference, so that we can do that and make that difference immediately, rather than waiting on all of it until we have the more complicated part done.
We're waiting on a couple setbacks information, and that's it. It's not complicated.
Well, it's not complicated, but staff has told me that it's probably going to take 60 or 90 days. And, you know, this is June, July, August, September. That puts us past Labor Day into October before we have a first reading.
And then we're going to take resources away from actually completing that work, because we're going to focus on getting the first and second reading, getting the impact study done for this, so that then we can double up and have the work done again for a second impact study, where we could just have one done.
I think that the work on the impact study is not being duplicated, because it's different impacts. I mean, the impact studies are going to have to be done for all of the different impacts regardless. So it's not like you're creating more work. You're splitting the work up into bite-sized chunks. You know, you don't eat an elephant in one bite, right? You know, like we're splitting things up into bite-sized chunks that can be achieved so that we can make something happen, versus waiting until we can do it all at once. I mean, this isn't the hill I'm going to die on. You know, it was, my feeling was that I didn't express it well last week. And so I wanted to bring it back up, just to make sure that everybody understood what my goal was. And my goal is just to get a chunk of the beach ordinance that could make a difference on what's happening on the beach done sooner rather than later.
I think you expressed yourself quite well at the meeting. And I think we had this exact same conversation at that meeting. And I find it interesting that you would bring it up now in the absence of the other 5 individuals who disagreed with that viewpoint.
I don't know that they disagreed with that viewpoint. There were several of them that were nodding their heads when they were
here. We had this conversation, and we had consensus that we do it all as one.
And
now we want to reopen that discussion in the absence of the 5 individuals who participated in that discussion and who are instrumental in getting this ordinance passed.
Sure, I brought it back up because I felt like when I walked out of that meeting at the end, I felt like the direction that the discussion went, I felt like my intention wasn't clear, and that I felt like I had not clearly expressed my intention in what I was trying to accomplish by splitting it up. And so if I was incorrect about that, I mean, I feel a little bit like you're trying to insinuate that I'm trying to do something underhanded, which I am absolutely not doing. I want to be very clear about that. My intentions are to try to actually accomplish something when the wheels of government turn so slow that it is incredibly painful for everybody who's sitting out here. And so, because we've been talking about this for so long, my goal was to try to accomplish something. We absolutely don't have to.
Is it worth bringing the staff thoughts on what's just transpired between the two real quick? I don't mean another meeting, I mean right now. I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to comment.
Yeah, I mean, I can lend just some procedural tools, maybe. I understand the reason for the request is that this is an operational part of the ordinance that staff believes that there needs to be more data collected on it to support it. When you're dealing with legislation, it can come, we can advertise, it's 2 readings, first and second reading. You can always, carve that out during the first hearing or even the second hearing. I mean, it's legislation. So if just offering you that as another procedural process, that if you can't come to a consensus on doing that bifurcated process, you can start the process. And I don't know how long it will take for staff to, if it's 90 days, 20 days, I haven't talked about that. But during the first reading, if it gets to where you believe that that section of it's unwieldy, or for some reason you want any section really, you can make changes during that. That's what the purpose of the first and second reading is for.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, to move forward as quickly as we can to get the first reading, and between now and then, our staff can look at, well, how long is it going to take? What do we need to do? And we could better address the concerns about getting something done now rather than later. So, I think it's a great suggestion. Get that first reading done. We can gather more information, and even before at the second reading, you could still make a change. So at least we would get the process going as quickly as possible.
Yes, I just want to make sure I understand what you said. Get the first reading done with a chunk pulled out, or just push the whole thing forward and revise it as we...
Yeah, push the whole thing forward now as the first reading, or not now, but get the first reading on as soon as possible, as written. And then at that first hearing, we could probably have some more information on the timeline on what it could do. But you could either move it forward like it is then, or carve something out, or you could wait till the second reading. If you needed more information, then you could carve it out at that point. But at least we're moving as quickly as we can with something.
So in essence, things could happen tangentially, staff could be working on data collection at the same time. If you did have two ordinances, and I'm not saying one, I'm just procedurally saying, you do have to do an economic impact statement for every ordinance. So if you had two different ordinances, you have to do that. I'm not saying that's a big deal. Advertisement is also another cost. You'd have to re-advertise it as a second ordinance. But I'd certainly understand if it got to a first hearing and you felt like there wasn't enough empirical data to support that operational part, which you call administrative management part of the beach, then it can be severed off of that, and we'll run with it as Commissioner Marriott had suggested, just run with that on a different timeline. But at least get going on the first hearing, as the manager stated, we could do that.
Yeah. I mean, our common goal is to be able to enforce as soon as possible. I think that was your intentions.
Yeah.
I don't think it changes staff time. When I say staff. So we've already done a first reading, and let me just remind you of that last March.
We have not.
It was on the agenda to talk about, and it got pushed off. So this is over a year where we've had now multiple workshops to relook at it because of the change of the commission and the beach stewardship. So we absolutely can do that. I guess I would we're willing to do, it doesn't change staff time, and we're not dropping off any portion of any part of what we've been discussing over the years. So I don't think that's at all staff's intention, nor Matthew's intention, nor Commissioner Marriott's intention. Yeah. It's to try to accomplish something that we have been working on and we have discussed in multiple workshops. And I feel like there are certain items in this that have been agreed upon over all these workshops. So it was taking out the ones that are still in question. I think that's it. We can do it either way. The timing is not going to change for what the information that you guys need.
From that March meeting, is it considered a first reading?
I don't think we actually, I think it was deferred, basically. Okay. It was never read, it was never heard.
It was just an agenda.
And this is probably a new language, new title, things like that. So I don't think it was considered a first reading, although it was on the agenda, but it was deferred.
Andrew, does the business impact statement have to be done prior to the first reading or just prior to passage of an ordinance?
That's a great question. I would think that it has to be, I'm going to guess, I hate doing this, lawyers shouldn't do it, but I would have it there for the first reading. I mean, I wouldn't have it for the second. I mean, I'll check on it, but I would think that logically you would want it for the first reading, because she's shaking her head, no way.
Statute is
It's by adoption? It's by the time of adoption?
It's 7 to 10 days before you adopt it. And so
that's what I get for guessing.
Yeah, so what we do here at the city is staff, whomever puts it together, prepares it. I put it on the city's website. There's a specific page dedicated to it, along with the ad that goes in the newspaper. So It's advertised in advance of the publication of the agenda, but it's also attached to the agenda as well. It has to be done 7 to 10 days prior to the adoption, just like your advertisement.
Saved again by the city clerk. Right. Thank you.
That's why we keep her around.
Exactly. You could have deferred.
Never guess at anything.
So from what I'm hearing from the tool that you call it our tool, this is in our toolbox, it would still have the same effect, and we can use it in the future to pull it out if we see fit, right? Or I don't say pull, I shouldn't say pull it out. I do not want to remove it, obviously, but to
Just bifurcate
to wait
it.
for further information on it. So
Yeah, and if it's information that's necessary for the city to implement it, then I think that's prudent. I don't know enough about like what the information is lacking, if that's something but at the end of the day, it's got to be an enforceable ordinance. And so if it's data and information that's necessary to do that, then I would think that that's prudent. I don't know enough about it.
So at that first hearing, if it's not something that can be enforced, that would be brought to us to know that maybe we should move that section out, right? Because you said it has to be enforceable. So if not knowing what's working with the density of the cabanas and the setbacks and so forth, then we can't enforce it, the best course would be to chunk that out, right?
Could be.
Could be, possibly.
Right, depending. Okay.
As a point of order, can I speak as a beach steward? Because the beach stewards were not invited to this, even though it was on the agenda. I haven't noticed, but.
The commission still decides.
If you're making a decision tonight on something, then the public.
Yeah, I think we're having a discussion, and I think you have a meeting coming up, at which point you could make recommendations have a discussion with the other commissioners, bring up whichever points you would like, and then if your recommendation is one way or the other, that can certainly pass on to the commission, because we're still 30, 45 days out from first reading anyway.
Well, that's what I was looking to do, is see if we can change the agenda and not just do the turtles next week.
I mean, that is between you and the city clerk to add to the agenda.
We discuss it on this ordinance item.
Yeah.
Well, with the knowledge that we can potentially move forward sooner with a first reading and address that as we go, I'm fine with that. I just didn't want to have something, hold us up and have months and more, and then we're going to have elections in August, and then somebody's going to say, oh, there's new commissioners, we should have another workshop, and so I'm comfortable with that, if that's an option where we can bring the first reading to the commission sooner perhaps than we were thinking might have been otherwise, and continue to move forward.
So you would have first reading, you would have the benefit of hearing from the public and others, and if you all chose that, hey, we need to take some of this stuff out based on that too, it's a good way to shine a light on something, but
Yep.
it kind of achieves both. You're not like giving up any ability to change that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next we have item 6C, a discussion on the freebie. And so we've had multiple discussions at the commission on the service that the freebie provides, in particular in reference to tipping. So one of the things that I can say I've personally observed and I've had residents bring to my attention is the increased, well, some of the drivers have big tip jars, some of them have smaller tip jars. But what was most, and again, I'm really not against it. I think if it's not obnoxious and obtrusive, even though when we look back at our contract specifically states, and I asked our city manager to review the contract just for clarification, but we did this last year in September or October, where we reviewed the language of the contract and we came to the conclusion that, yes, they're not supposed to be asking for tips at all. And if it had been just the tip jars, I probably would have said, you know what, it's not, if they're not, actively soliciting, I mean, putting a tip chart this big might be considered actively soliciting tips. But I've had reports from several residents who have, after they took a ride with the freebie and did not tip, that their ratings are going down. And these are individuals that don't drink, don't frequent bars, they're not in a position where they would have been obnoxious or inebriated or anything else. So I think it's prudent that we go back and relook at that and have a conversation with our vendor about, what practices they allow and don't allow with their employees, especially since we have a contract that states what they're supposed to be doing.
Can you explain what you mean by rating?
So when you take a ride with the freebie, just like you would with Uber or Lyft, you can leave a from 1 to 5 star rating for the driver, and then this driver does the same thing for you. Now, again, I just saw this past weekend somebody got a 1-star rating, taking a ride from one hotel to a restaurant and back, because the assumption is because they didn't tip, because really there wasn't anything else. And so what happens is the drivers look at your rating, and then they determine whether they want to pick you up or not based on your rating, right? And it almost appears like there is a unspoken understanding where non-tippers get a low rating, which signals to the other drivers, hey, these individuals here, don't pick them up because they have low ratings. I mean, that's one of the possibilities. That could be one of the consequences of it. Again, I think it's something that the vendor needs to look into. I think that's a conversation we need to have with the vendor. And, why we're allowing a practice that is specifically prohibited by the contract.
Mayor, I could tell you right now that, having a jar that says tip on it is the same thing as asking for a tip.
Sure.
That's my opinion. I mean, it puts people in a position where if they don't tip, they feel like, they're not. And if what you're saying is true, that's defeating the purpose of the freebie, because they shouldn't be doing that. There are lots of companies like Publix and other places that actually have their employees say, we cannot accept tips or something. So unless we want to change the contract, and we can, where it says we don't accept tips in their freebies, maybe they should stop the practice of putting jars out.
I remember hearing conversations here that, jar's okay as long as they don't ask or say you got to do it or have a sign that says you got to give us a tip. But, the contract is very specific. It says the service should be free to users and no tips will be accepted. Wow. I mean, that's the language of the contract.
Is there I understand, like on Uber and that sort of thing, why the drivers would want to be able to rate the passengers and decide who they pick up. But when the city is paying for the service, I feel like that part shouldn't even be allowed. Like the drivers shouldn't be able to decide who they do and don't want to pick up. That seems to completely defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do with that service.
Yeah.
Could we find out about that? I mean, I just pulled up my app just to see if I'm rated, but I didn't know that existed.
You can't see your own rating. I looked into that as well.
Okay.
So the drivers can see your rating. So I know on Uber, for example, you can log into your profile. You can see what your rating is. Yeah. You cannot do that with the freebie.
I know I've talked about, I brought it up to staff about the tippings. I've seen the same thing. I write it frequently, and I see it. It does. The ones I've been on does not say tip, but there is a jar. And when I spoke to staff, it was about, look, it's on our contract, right? We can't tip, but can we? And kind of, I heard Mayor kind of insinuate, it's not. We don't want to give something to someone who's doing really great. Right? Regardless if we said no tipping, if I'm riding and I know there's no tipping and they still say no tipping allowed, I could be very grateful for someone helping me, right? And I'm okay with doing that myself. But could we strongly suggest and ask that there is a sign placed on all the Ubers that says no tipping or even to,
freebies.
I'm sorry, Uber. I got the Uber in my mind. Freebies, right? Or like Andrew, like you suggested, like there's, and probably not another lapel because they're not going to see it, but just right on by the dashboard or by the side. And now obviously it's going to be a little bit different because we have some of the new Teslas out there already. Can we assure that they do this?
Well, we can certainly suggest that to them, but I think if we want to enforce the contract, which we should, we put it back on them to make sure their employees understand that they can't accept, and they probably be putting a sign would certainly help that, help them enforce or take care of their own employees that way. We'd certainly suggest that.
Is there anything in the contract that would allow them or disallow them from, like, deciding who they pick up or who they don't pick up? Or, I mean, is that something that we should be thinking about putting in a contract if we renew it or amend it or change it?
I don't know, I can take a look at that, but I don't know right off the top of my head.
I mean, we could have language in there that says they're not allowed to have any type of discrimination, algorithms or anything like that where they can decide that. I mean, I can come up with
Hard to
easy
enforce, I
enough
guess,
to put
yeah.
into that.
Yeah.
Or just remove the rating system.
Yeah.
Yeah, any of that.
I got another comment on that Commissioner Reznicki alluded to. I thought where we left off with them, that something was coming back to us to vote on the cars and not allowing Teslas, but I've seen a Tesla out there. And I don't know if it's giving people rides or it's just an employee, yeah. So.
It is.
I was confused about that part.
Yeah, they also have a minivan now, and all those are parked at the Warren Webster Center. They're taking up the parking lot now instead of that little gravel fenced-in area they're supposed to be using.
But now the minivan is for disability, so that one I know.
I think that one's been around.
Yeah, that one's been around specifically.
But the Tesla, my understanding with the last meeting we had, was they were going to come back to us and we were going to talk about it more, about maybe going all Teslas or half Teslas or no Teslas.
I rode one.
Yep. Kristen, the Community Development Director, and I met with them a few days after that meeting, requested specific information that you all were asking during that, and we're still waiting for them to provide us the information so I can get it on the agenda. But I wasn't going to put it on an agenda until I got the information.
And I do ride it frequently enough to, and I don't tip, so I guess they're still picking me up. They don't know I'm a commissioner either, so they're still picking me up. But the Teslas were pretty immediate after that meeting, just so you all know, because I was like, didn't we just have a meeting, and here I am riding a Tesla. Now, riding it, though, they did explain to me it's because they were down vehicles. So there was an explanation, so it's either they give us the service or, we don't, and we somehow get reimbursed for the time that the service is not available. So it's, what 3-minute comment do you want to hear on the podium? We don't have the service, or I'm riding a Tesla. So it's kind of hard, not to excuse it by any means, because I was just as shocked. That's why I mentioned it.
I guess the positive is we could try them out, see how we like them.
Well, back to the original complaint that I think we all share is, I think if the contract says no tipping, there should not be a tip jar out there, period. That definitely sets up discrimination.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have discussion item 6D, 8th Avenue parking.
Yeah, thank you. And Mayor, you brought this up at our last commission meeting. So both Jennifer and I have had several meetings with some of the merchants on 8th Avenue. And they share, and it's not all the merchants, it's a couple of them that own the restaurants and some other establishments. And with the impact of the seawall, we talked about this already, and then the beach renourishment, they've lost a lot of parking spots. For example, Mother's Day, one of the restaurants had 60 reservations. They only got 13 because people couldn't find a place to park. There was nowhere to park. So the issue is the beach goers have figured out that 8th Avenue is basically free parking. So they'll park there all day long, even though there's a sign that says 3 hours. Of course, they all know to ignore that, and they get free parking. So what I came out of that with was, you're going to have to reach out to the other merchants and kind of come up with a unified front, because I don't think we can recommend a fix for 2 or 3 businesses. Everybody kind of has to be in agreement on what we do. So one of the options is turn 8th Avenue back into paid parking, or I shouldn't say back, put it into paid parking. The other one was maybe adjust the software, if this is possible, and I think it would be a pretty easy fix, so that when somebody parks on 8th or 9th and they get there 3 hours, that's all they get. If they try to go back in and, use their app to renew that 3, they don't get it. And then the ticket enforcement guys would come along. So I just wanted to bring that up for everybody's awareness. I don't think we're at the point yet where there's consensus on what to do. They were also thinking about some way to enforce, like somebody out there with a stand that says, hey, this is business only on the weekends. You can't come through here, or please don't come through here unless you are going to a business. That one makes me a little more nervous, because if we do that, because they were mentioning the city paying for it, if we do that, obviously, then we have to take into consideration Corey Avenue, Upland Beach, all the other businesses. So I think that could open up a can of worms. So some great ideas. I just think the next step is they need to coordinate with the rest of the establishments on 8th and kind of come at us with a united front and a suggestion. So in the meantime, if we could maybe take a look at, is there a way to change the software so folks can't repetitively park in the business spots, and then what would be involved with turning 8th Avenue. So just bring that up for discussion, if anybody's interested.
So I think with the Park mobile app, is that the one that we use, Wayne?
Yes.
Okay, so I know with the Park mobile app in downtown, they have different zones and different restrictions for the different zones. So in some zones, it's paid parking 2 hours, but you cannot extend beyond 2 hours. Some of them you can. It would necessitate that we create a zone for 8th Avenue, for example, where you could park you still have to register to park. I'm just thinking through this, right? Where you have a 2-hour max parking time. If you're not registered to park, you get a ticket. If you're registered to park, it's free, up to 2 hours without the ability to extend. I don't know if I know that's possible within the app. I'm not sure if that's the route we want to go, but that might be another solution.
Yeah.
Where you can, it doesn't cost anything, and it doesn't, because I know the businesses have mentioned they have some challenges with the paid parking, especially on the weekends or holidays when it's 25 for the whole day.
Do we have disc on 8th? Like we don't use those, do we?
The hockey pucks? No.
Works. Of course, this has been an issue that's gone on for years and years. There's been a lot of ideas, a lot of things that have been tried, but I think the point is to see if there's any new ideas as a group down there that they may have to that we haven't tried, or maybe we didn't do a good enough job on before. The problem with one of the solutions of putting someone there, this is only permitted, these are public streets, we can't restrict who goes up and down the streets. We can do something about the parking, but that's several issues there. But yeah, I think you're right that it needs to be a unified idea, because I know I've talked with some of them too, and different ones have different ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, anyway, just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You also have item 6E.
Yeah, thank you. So the Montessori school has been approaching the staff for quite some time, ever since the dog park got put back in. They were asking if there was a way to put the kids' playground got removed. So they were asking, is there a way where we could put in another small playground in Hurley Park? They have one at the Montessori school, but they want a little bit bigger facility, or they want a bigger facility put in Hurley Park than their little tiny ones they have at the Montessori school. The conversation was that they would, and the price tag was somewhere around $85,000. There were 2 different options. The conversation was that they had enough people through Montessori and through Pasadena Community Church that they would donate $50,000, or not $50,000, half of the cost as a
two different ways to do it. One was to collaborate on the park, and then I think after talking with legal, we decided the best way would be a donation that is strictly geared toward a kids park, a kids playground in Hurley Park. So that seems to be the way forward. So when they first sent the petition, and I got it, I kind of balked because it was first name, last name, initial only, and then like 33707 or 33706. I couldn't decipher who it was. I had no way of telling if it was, folks from some sign-up list, or it was folks that were really in my neighborhood, our neighborhood, District 4. So after some give and take, they got back, and I got a plethora of emails from actual folks that I could recognize the name, their address, where they live, do you have kids, that type of thing. So now that we, after a lot of miscommunication, pardon me, now that I finally got those, I'm good with it from my perspective. However, this would be something I'm recommending for the budget talks. And of course, it's up to the pleasure of the commission to see if this is something, when we get to that point, that they agree with, putting that, a small playground back in. So that's kind of where we're at.
Would we have to go through the regular procurement channels if we're using, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. I think it's been something that's been brought up for the last 2 years. I think it's something we should take action on. I think it'd be great if we can ask the city staff to put together a proposal, and
We can start looking into that, and
yeah.
obviously the budget issue, and then the split on the cost would have to come back to y'all, but we can start working on that, yes, sir.
Great.
And there is an issue of a natural gas line that kind of goes right through that area. So that's where the experts are going to have to weigh in and go, here's where we can put it, here's where it's safe to put it, or whatever. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
One more thing on that. There was a playground there before.
Yeah, but the dog park is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
All right. Next, we have staff reports and city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to remind the public that voting is in August. There are links on our city website under the election page linking to the Pinellas County SOE in regard to check and see if you are signed up to have a mail ballot. If you're not signed up for how to get a mail ballot, work through the SOE's website to sign up to get a mail-in ballot so that you can participate in the August election. That information is standard on the city's website under the election page. It's always there, and the Pinellas County Supervisor of Election page is pretty easy to navigate. I have to do it often, so it's pretty user-friendly, or you can give me a call and I'll walk you through it.
And you have to register each year.
Yes, you do have to sign up again for a mail ballot every time you want one for any election. Well, if there's 2 elections that year, then you would just sign up one time, but yes,
And I
annually.
could be wrong, but I think it said 8 July was the deadline for the mail-ins, for requesting one. I might be wrong there.
I have the schedule, I don't know off the top of my head. It's very odd because the mailing has to, by statute, has to be so many days, and I know that residential is in July. However, on my schedule, I remember typing in like 7 days before the election is the last day to request a mail ballot, which I thought was really odd because they mail it out in July, but that's what their website was saying. I had to double check for one of the candidates that qualified, so. Yeah, but all that information is on the SOE's website.
Thank you. City manager?
No, sir.
City attorney?
2 things. Real quickly, I'm pleased to introduce you to Sharon Linsner. She's a lawyer in our firm. She's been there for 4 years with us. She's been extremely involved with city business on ordinances, easements, contracts, you name it, all of the requests for legal services in the background. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to bring her up here and let her meet everybody that she's been talking to on the phone and in emails and so forth and so on, and to get a feeling of the meetings and so forth. So this is Sharon. She's a very good lawyer, and we're happy to have her in our firm. And she's very familiar with the city. I took her around on a tour, and she was like, oh, I know that, because she's dealt with all these issues, but she hasn't been here in person. So I'm trying to get her more acquainted with personally with the city and with the city personnel. So thanks for being here, Sharon. Secondly, I know that there have been some snafus with the emails, so some of you may not have received my email last night, and also there was an email that went out from the Florida League of Cities regarding the Form 6 litigation. There was a 33-page order that was issued by the Southern District Federal or U.S. Court, basically saying to the Commission on Ethics that they cannot enforce that Senate bill that required the full disclosure. It's a freedom of speech issue. I won't get into all the legalities of it. The Florida League of Cities email has a link on it that will bring up the actual order, and then it's got a letter that was issued by the Commission on Ethics, and I provided it to Amber today with different instructions. I don't know where you all are with your filings, but apparently the commission is now having people do the filings by Form 1 instead of Form 6. I don't know if that's going to change because that wasn't really in the order, but they're trying to fix their website so that you're directed to the right form, in other words. So look for that email from the Florida League of Cities. It's got a good explanation on it, or you could talk to Amber about it. It is, I found the Commission on Ethics letter a little confusing, but that's normal. I mean, the order came out yesterday, so. And that's it for me.
Thank you. District 4?
Oh, gosh, I've talked enough tonight. Just probably my final meet and greet tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. at Hurley Park for any District 4 residents. That's all I have.
Thank you. District 3?
I just wanted to mention, I did attend the Florida League of Cities training that was held Friday, well, it's gone since Thursday, so Thursday to Sunday. And it was long. I would wake up at 7 in the morning, was there till 5:30. But it was a wealth of information. It was all day. We worked through lunch. You didn't leave. But I learned a lot, and I'm trying to figure out how to disseminate it, some of the stuff to all of you all here, because they do give a lot of great information for newly elected, but I think just overall. And they did briefly talk about Form 6. They didn't tell us about that order, but but I'll read on that. But there was just, I mean, I have so many notes and so many pages, things to ask, Andrew, and I brought up some to the city manager as well for Wayne. But it is really worth it. I know there's, I think, another one coming in August, I think it was. I don't want to say the exact date. And of course, this is for the commission. I know there's something coming out for the conference, but I haven't been able to see my email, so I'll wait for that. But I highly recommend it. So.
Thank you. District 2?
Yeah, nothing district specific. Just was going to say, start thinking about and planning for hurricane season, and let's hope for the best.
Thank you. District 1?
Just that the Sunday morning market on Corey is still happening. And even though it was pretty hot this past Sunday, there was a bunch of people there. It's still a lot of great vendors, and I'd encourage everybody to go check it out.
Thank you. I know oftentimes in government, and this was always one of my complaints before I came into office was, there's not enough communication from the city about some of the things going on, and so I'm actually just want to say how impressed I am with our new public information officer. It's the volume of information is coming out, and it's not a matter of quantity, while there is actually quite a lot of quantity. Just if you look at the fire department, you look at the library, you look at the city's, social media page, there's constantly information, but it's actually quality information. And so as part of that, ongoing outreach to make sure that we increase our communication to our residents, what are we actually doing? That they're not watching every single commission meeting, not sitting here for 4 hours. So as part of that, one of the things we discuss is, in addition to doing the district town hall meetings, is also doing a citywide mayor's town hall. And so the first one will be 2 weeks from tomorrow on June 26th.
Yes.
Right here in Chambers. It'll just be an informal session where we're going to talk about some of the things that we've done this year, where we are, you know, where we're going. But it's going to be more citywide rather than district-wide, just as a means of improving our communication with our residents and our constituents. With that, I think probably be at 6 o'clock, but it'll be posted on our social media. Mark's been excellent about that. And I can't say the amount of good things I've heard from residents about the improved, quality of our communication. So that's a good thing. Unless there's anything else, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.